Hello and welcome along to yet another live show on cricket.com, and it's part 2 out of 3 in terms of reviewing all the IPL teams 2024. And today we're going to be talking about 3 teams and 3 who've been as flat as a soda bottle once you leave it open. I'm talking about Chennai, Lucknow and Delhi. We'll break it into all the things you guys want to talk about. I'm talking about top batter, top bowler, their fixtures, how their season really unfolded, and more importantly, we'll, of course, give you our suggestions of who they should retain heading into that massive mega auction next year. My name is Avanish Hegde. Of course, just reached Chennai, and Ahmedabad was a tough one to take, not just with the heat, but, of course, the result going my beloved RCB's way. But they fought valiantly, and they fought really bravely. We'll talk about them in the next review, but right here, right now, I have 3 faces which you guys have seen 100 times or maybe more on this particular cricket.com summer and the coverage of IPL 2024. I'm talking about Anirudh Srinivas, Jeet Vacharanjani, and of course, Nikhil Popat. Guys, how are we on this Thursday evening? I can't even remember the days anymore. Nikhil, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's fairly quiet. I don't know why. There's a lot of noise a couple of days back, and it's all mellowed down now. Yesterday was probably the quietest I've heard Bangalore in terms of both in the office and outside. But it's okay. It is the sport. Somebody has to win. Somebody has to lose. But yeah, otherwise, good. Probably the best 3 teams have made it to the knockouts. Good luck to them.
Yeah, KKR, RR, and SRH. It'll be fascinating to see who really lifts it, because we are going to be doing watch-alongs tomorrow and, of course, on Sunday. So join us for that, and we'll have a lot of chat with those 3 teams in particular. But right here, right now, it is, of course, going to go from the bottom of the table to the top. We, of course, did review, who was it? Mumbai, Punjab, and who else finished that
GT.
time?
Gujarat.
And GT it was. Yeah, Gujarat it was. And right now, Lucknow, Delhi, and Chennai is the order. Jeet and Anirudh, before we start, how are you feeling on a Thursday? And again, has the IPL ended for you all, or do you think another 2 games and then it'll officially end? For me, it's ended. Sorry.
I mean, all good, first of all. And yeah, I think that's the feeling, right? The feeling like it's towards the end of the season. And I'm looking forward to next week, 7:30, when there's absolutely nothing to look forward to, sadly. So, yeah, that feeling always hits after the IPL, because IPL is one tournament we've got a game every day, right? So, it's going to be a different feeling next week onwards. But again, the World Cup rolls along. And as they say, the cricketing caravan keeps moving.
Yeah, 7:30 tomorrow is going to be an interesting one if you guys are football fans. Hopefully, also on Saturday, that is, on the 25th, with United playing that City FA Cup. That's the only saving grace I have as a sporting fan this summer. And Jeet, in terms of your IPL viewing, right? I mean, of course, first time with us at cricket.com, you must have had a lot of fun doing the watch-alongs. But when you look back in the last, say, 45, 50, more than that, all those days, what really stands out for you, even though that we have 3 teams left and we're in the dying embers of the tournament?
The mad RCB fandom is what stood out for me. I'm not surprised that I'm in Bangalore and there is mad RCB fandom, losing the hearing ability as well in my left ear. But yeah, it just feels as if the IPL has gotten started now with the 3 best teams. I've made it through quite rightly. So it's been a good experience if I consider the overall time that I've had over here. Good knowledge, good thoughts being put forward, good discussions being had, and it's been a good package overall. So quite happy with it.
Indeed. Now my allegiances have shifted to SRH because, look, our main city is in Hyderabad. When I say main city, cricket.com's headquarters, legit, the parent company is in Hyderabad. So if they do win the IPL, there's something definitely planned for us, 100%. So hopefully Kavya Maran does it and Gautam Gambhir and Sanju Samson can really take a piss. But look, that's just my particular opinion. You guys are most welcome to have your say on this particular live show. Straight away, Santosh Udupa saying no RCB and CSK. So all tickets there for qualifier 2. They've even opened hospitality tickets, saying the Liverpool fan that he is, Santosh. Avnish, you had a WPL this summer. Cheeky from Priyanshu Dhawan. Keep your comments coming through, and we'll, of course, take as many as we can this evening, as we always do. We're going to be reviewing 3 teams if you guys have just joined us, but like this video before we go forward right now. So we'll start with the Lucknow Super Giants. And guys, where do you want to start? Because there was so much talk about this team, given the fact that they've done well in their first 2 seasons, and with JL and KL, it didn't really work out for them. They could have gone to the playoffs, should have, many people said, but they cocked it up, losing to Delhi in Delhi when the average score chasing was in the target, but it wasn't to be. But let's just have a look at their results and how it's gone on for them, Nikhil Popat, because ultimately, when we look at this LSG team, they started off the campaign pretty well, 3 out of 4 wins. But then what went wrong? Was it almost like course correction throughout for them?
I think, see, the first 10 games is when you look like, oh, there's a lot of green there. And a lot of green there was despite a lot of issues that were there in the side. Of course, injuries may not have helped, but it's eventually like, more like Lucknow snoozed Giants there because they just slept through their way to the later half. And you had no intensity in terms of, you couldn't understand how they would go about their jobs because there were so many batting order changes, not for the first time. They lost a key player to injury who won them a very crucial game that was against Punjab right up top, started the track for them. And then you were like, okay, now they have the people who can do the job. But I think it's just another season where too many options, but as the tactics, the management still was very hard done by in terms of their own tactics. There's a particular average of 5. I mean, it's a forgettable season for somebody like that. But when you have those players right up top and you have Quinton de Kock, who hardly look interested in playing, apart from the couple of games and a couple of starts that he had, there's not much to ride on. So too much to do for Nicholas Purin. I was screaming in the preview that get Stoinis at 3, get Stoinis at 3, and they did it. And how well did it work out for them? So just wondering what took them so long. And again, hopefully, maybe the next year when they don't have this guy back to lead them, maybe they'll find better sources and better ways to discuss what happened in the game also.
Yeah, we'll talk about KL Rahul and where really he could go on with his IPL career. Many people saying RCB is definitely an option, but whether LSG coax him again and being like, you know what, KL, forgettable season, can you do it with us once again? Only time will tell. Hoggers, bloggers, good question. We'll talk about KL and, of course, LSG and all of that. And Ashutosh Bajpai, most welcome to the chat because it's fans like you, especially of the LSG kind, who we really want to interact with in the comments as well. And a good comment there, which we'll, of course, get Jeet and Anirudh to answer. Anirudh, I'll come to you before I get to Jeet's perspective on LSG, because when we look at this graphic once again, some few things stand out. They've beaten CSK twice, they've beaten MI twice, but look, the 3 teams remaining in the competition currently, SRH, RR, and KKR, they were found wanting there. Do you think that was probably the reason why they couldn't really make the top 4 and they got caught out by really, really good teams, Anirudh?
I think that's been their issue since their start. So even if you remember the 22 season, they didn't win a single game against the top 3 back then. It was RCB, Rajasthan, and Gujarat who finished in the top 3, and they played 5 games and they lost all 5. Even last season, they played against Gujarat twice, who obviously topped the table. They lost the game against Gujarat both times. In fact, one of them was a close game where they cocked up the chase towards the end, and they got battered by Mumbai as well. So from that perspective, in the eliminator, that is. So from that perspective, they've always had the problem of beating the teams which are below them, but not quite being able to find the way against the so-called stronger teams. And it's been a pattern which has continued this season. But this season, what's been an issue is that, again, as Nikhil mentioned, the injuries haven't helped. But then one thing is, heading into the auction, they obviously had the least purse, and they decided to spend most of it on Shiva Mavi. Obviously, they've been unlucky that he's injured. It's just a thought that, was Shiva Mavi, even if he was fit, was he a game changer for them? I know they had less purse, but still feel that auction was something they just slept through. They had a strong team. They didn't. It wasn't like they had a clear hole to fill, but it just felt like they needed a couple more options just to give an alternative perspective of how they could probably build their 11. So that's one thing I'd hint at. The other thing is, again, the batting is what I'm more worried about, because the fact is, they're Indian batters, the likes of outside of Rahul. I mean, Hooda and whoever else they played, Padikkal, Arshil Kulkarni. Badoni obviously had a few knocks when the team needed in terms of being in a really tricky situation. He pulled them out a couple of times. But Padikkal, as Nikhil pointed out, had a horrible season. They stuck with Quinton de Kock for 14 games, which was except for the 2 games where he was injured, he played for 12 games. So where he was pretty much, except for the RCB game, he was horrendous throughout. And they didn't give Kyle Myers, who had a really, really good run with them last year, even a single game. I couldn't understand why. They even gave Ashton Turner a couple of games, but didn't give Kyle Myers a single game. So maybe that's the coach's misplaced priorities in some ways. But again, I think in terms of Lucknow as a whole, I think they can be happy with what they've done in 3 seasons, but this season should be a disappointment because they had a team to at least get to the playoffs. Again, I think there's a good chance they'd have, even if they did make the playoffs, they'd have probably been eliminated come the eliminator because the other three teams are still looking much better than them. But then they'd still say that at least get to the playoffs would have been their perspective, right? So it's an opportunity missed. But going into next season, depending again, the big question is whether KL Rahul stays or not, whether KL Rahul himself wants to stay, whether Lucknow want KL Rahul to stay. A couple of questions to be answered there. And from there, they can build on. If Rahul stays, even then they'll have a great core to build from. If Rahul goes, also they'll have to probably find Indian batters, which would be difficult. But then outside of that, they've still got some nice retention options. So should be an interesting move, interesting viewing in terms of what they make as a next move come next season. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I'll get your thoughts about the retentions and, of course, KL Rahul's captaincy. But I want to just ask Jeet about their particular team formula is such because they had some good names. Ashutosh pointing out clearly that they didn't show trust in the bench. Ashwin could have been backed as much as DDP Arsha that dropped after one odd game versus KKR. And he goes on to say, we need a finisher like Vadera, Rinku, so on and so forth. In fact, when you talk about that Kyle Mayer's point, it's quite baffling because I know Justin Langer had his deputy is Adam Borges, and they worked together in Perth Scorchers. So you could see why they were throwing in Ashton Turner and so on and so forth. But Kyle Mayers, come on, man. Give him one game. Given the fact that you guys gave even Shamar Joseph his IPL debut in Eden Gardens, I think it was, and then they pulled the plug on him. Jeet, let me ask you this. Some great names in terms of Indian core, right? Krunal Pandya, Ravi Bishnoi, Mayank Yadav was unearthed, of course. And then he made the point about Shivam Mavi. The fact that they had some really good cricketers and the fact that they had a little bit of history to support them, both top four finishes, why didn't it happen this time around? Is it the captain to blame, the new coach finding himself is pretty much like a rabbit in front of the headlights? What went wrong for LSG, according to you?
I'd say a lot came down to the coaching staff. It was a brand new coaching staff that was calling the shots. They had an Indian coaching staff that was predominant with Gautam Gambhir and Vijay Daya, and all these guys knew how the Indian players work and who should be in the 11 and how they should be utilized. With Justin Langer coming into the picture, bringing in Adam Borges, we saw a completely different strategy altogether. Like Anirudh said, it was completely baffling. How do you stick with Quinton de Kock? How do you stick with Devdutt Padikkal? How do you end up giving Arshin Kulkarni a go when you've got Kyle Mayers who has done so well previously? When there is the option of Prerak Markar who's yet to play a game. I just didn't understand how he didn't get a single game this time around. This guy again is very, very talented as Prerak Markar. Could have easily utilized him at number 3 and he would have contributed with the ball as well. So it was very, very baffling to me. Another point was that LST, before this tournament started, had successfully defended a total of 160 or over 160. But this tournament was not that 160 tournament. Teams were getting well over 200. So they had the playing 11 also fairly, focused upon getting to that score of 170, 175, which was not cut out. This was a different IPL altogether. You can't be having your top order, which has got KL Rahul, who's fairly slow. He did show intent, but it was still not good enough by the end of it. You've got Quinton de Kock, who's least interested in playing cricket, and you've got Devdutt Padikkal walking at number 3. How is that going to work out when your top order is like that, which is completely incapable of maximizing the power play based on the current form and the kind of mindset they've got? You've got to be positive, and you've got options to actually counter that. But we didn't see that either. Giving Ashton Turner a go, Shamar Joseph for a game. What was going on? It was completely didn't make sense.
Yeah, I think some of the experts in different platforms are, of course, questioning the batting order, like Jeet touched upon there, Nick. And it makes you think about, KL Rahul has been absolutely heckled by fans worldwide for his strike rate and his slow starts. But why were they holding people like Stoinis and Purin back? I know Stoinis batted up slightly higher the order, but their whole motto, especially hearing KL Rahul post-match presentations, be like, we had the hitters down the ground. The game's moved, right? KKR and SRH are going from ball one. So do you think LSG should take a page out of them? Because that's ultimately what has cost to them, Nick, according to you?
Yeah, completely agree to your point. And it's like, the management pre-deciding that, okay, this is how we'll play and we'll stick to this no matter what's happening in the tournament, which is, again, slightly baffling. Again, those names are not people who are out of the system. They are still around the system. They are watching enough cricket and they are part of enough tournaments or games as well that to understand that you can't be fixated with one thing at all point of time. KL Rahul did show enough intent in terms of his previous seasons. He probably had one of the few knocks where he was starting quickly. But then you put double pressure on yourself by backing just one guy that in Quinton de Kock that will keep backing him. But now we discussed this in the preview as well. He starts off and then he just fizzles away. It's been a pattern for Quinton de Kock right through his T20 career. How did nobody identify that? And what made you stick? See, it's one thing about I'm all for backing a youngster that that will come good, that will come good. But when you see it's not working out, sometimes you'll have to take the hard call. That's what DC did with David Warner. Now we don't know how much of it was injury, but they did that with even with Prithvi Shaw. That if it's not there, it's not there. You make the change, you get the better guy out there, and see if that guy works for you. So for them to not give a single game to Kyle Mayers and then just have a bowling plan where even with the ball, you saw them being very scattered. Some days Navin will bowl in the power play, some days they'll give the new ball. I mean, how do you give Quay Gautam 2 overs to Travis Head and Abhishek Sharma is beyond me. I'm sorry for all the skills that they'll have. 1 over, fine. Lalit Yadav, you saw what happened with Lalit Yadav in the second over. All those decisions are pre-decided. They're not happening on the field. So I think they were way off the mark in terms of how the game was actually happening. They were playing an own game in their own mind, and they end up because you see the losses towards the end of the season, they were all massive losses. I mean, they were not even in the reckoning because of the run rate backlog that they had. So it is just a shame that you look at those 7 wickets, 4 wickets, 98 runs, 10 wickets, 19 runs, 18 runs. And most of the time, you did not even feel they were part of the game. The DC game, it was Arshad Khan who got them close so much. So I think it was a case of a team management sticking to what they had pre-decided and then being very rigid about it. So we see that with DSG also, that they love to take 100 options. But if you have those 100 options, you need to be very clear when to use whom. Even Bishnoi, he bowled badly, but I don't think he was backed enough. There were times when Krunal Pandya was preferred over Bishnoi when the moment clearly said you needed a leggy here and not an off spinner. So just a season where everything has played a massive part, whether it's an Indian contingent or their tactics or the form of their overseas guy. I mean, how much can Sonis and Puran do by themselves? And you have Kyle Mayers who will, again, hasn't had the score to back, say, the form, but then how worse could it be than Quinton, who's not even hitting his straps? So, and I mean, Quinton also got out the same way 2-3 times in the entire season. So, just probably sums up their season. They were too far behind.
I suspected it could be a game of musical chairs for LSG with their openers, given the fact that KL Rahul was always going to open, and then which left-hander would open with him? Padikkal, de Kock, Mayers. Mayers didn't even get a nod. Padikkal probably would want to forget about this IPL season and never bring it up with even his friends and family over some lunch over there. But sports fans saying M. Siddharth could have been back more. Jeet mentioned that they didn't even use Prerak Mankad. So again, lots to think about from a Justin Langer perspective. Many people were saying from the outside that back to Simba Fire, the fact the first ever time he's coaching the IPL, fine, he's a good, renowned coach in the game of cricket, but essentially he got found out with regards to a lot of tactical errors as well. Shlok Badge saying when captain doesn't show that he has guts to change the game, how can his team motivate from their leader? And it's a good point that you mentioned over there, because it'll be a perfect segue to talk about LSG's top batter. And invariably, it is this man, KL Rahul, because if you look at what he's mustered in the season, 520 runs in that 14 games. But again, the strike rate might deceive you at times. He did play some match-costing knocks. And I love KL Rahul. Make no mistake. I mean, not the Bangalore biased over here, but I genuinely feel for him. Because even when I was hearing that particular interview with Ashwin, it was Anirudh, he went on to say that he was timid even in that India-Australia World Cup final, and he didn't have the confidence. And do you think that's the thing which is missing from KL Rahul right now? He has the talent that we've all seen and observed for the last 5-6 years. Everyone keeps talking about KL Rahul of the 2018 and that particular IPL. When will it come back? Will it ever come back? And do you think him as a batting captain for LSG has pretty much cost them this time around?
I mean, I think he played a couple of really bad knocks. There's no getting away from that. I mean, the Sunrisers game, for example. But as Nikhil pointed out, he generally did try to change his approach for, say, 6 or 7 games in between. I think the sample size wasn't big enough to say give him too much credit for it as well. Because, again, 6 or 7 games, I don't think is a fair sample size in that perspective. But in terms of his general T20 game, I think he himself recognized post-game to Harsha Bhogle after the Mumbai Indians game. He himself said that I don't play T20 cricket for a while now because he's probably not going to play T20 cricket in the next IPL at this rate. And
Sorry,
he did say that he may.
do you think, like, before the season we were all second guessing and there was our gumption that he's going to be batting at 5, given the fact that the World Cup is there?
That is the thing. That's the thing where, I mean, there were rumors that he was going to bat in the middle order, and I mean, I don't know what's transpired since then, because even the Padikkal trade we all thought was in the move that okay, he may go down at 3, 4, 5, wherever it is, and you may see Padikkal open with either Quinton de Kock or Kyle Mayers. So that eventually did not happen. So again, there's a lack of communication from that side. So we as fans, we're not privy to those conversations. But just talking about Rahul the batter, because you were stressing on him, I think it's very clear to see that at this point he's got a lot to work on his game. I think even apart from the mindset, which obviously is a big factor, even technically as well, looking back at the way he was as a batter in 2018 and 19, his bat lift was a lot more higher. Right now, he's obviously changed to accommodate, to play a lot more three formats, because in the 18-19 period, he had a horrendous test match run where he lost the test spot, right? After that, he's come back and he's done well in the test match, a lot more better, at least, in the test match game. And he's obviously become a fine ODI player as well. But then it's in some ways had an effect on his T20 game. And the one thing which stood out to me in the Harsha Bhogle interview post the Mumbai Indians game was that he said that I don't play T20 cricket for a while, but looking back at how this tournament's gone, I think each of us know where we have to improve on. So I think that would be kind of an improve. As a KL Rahul fan myself, I hope that that's something for him to look forward to. I mean, yeah, I'm just reading Asto's comment here. I mean, Syed Mushtaq Ali, I'm not quite sure if that's the problem here. I don't think it's him playing games here. Honestly, he'll be preparing for the BGT at that time. So as you said, he won't be playing the tournament.
What about Ramana's point? What about Ramana's point? Because he goes on to say KL.
Exactly, that's my problem. So his bat lift in the 18-19 period was a lot more high. If you remember, one of his iconic shots was Jasprit Bumrah over extra cover. I think it was an indoor, and these days he probably won't be able to access that area unless he moves his feet away completely. It feels like the bat lift. I'm not that technically equipped to say that that's probably the point of difference here, but I'm sure that makes a difference 100%. So from that perspective, I think he's got to work on his T20 game. No question about that. Either that, or he obviously over a period of time is not going to be a serviceable T20 batter for too long. So either of that. So he'll have to find a way in the next 12 months to improve that. But again, talking about Lucknow as a whole, they'll again have to make a decision as to whether Rahul continues as captain. Rahul himself may not want to change captain because of some of the scenes which happened post-game, one of the games. I think we are all aware of what happened between him and Goenka. And he himself, I'm sure he's an India player, and he wouldn't have liked whatever happened during that scenes, and maybe a certain.
But even though they patched up, even though they patched up, do you think there's still a little bit of bad
hands
blood
up
there?
I'm just going to say hands up. I do not believe that. It's supposedly a patch up, but we don't believe that. I mean, on paper, supposedly so, but we don't know what's actually happened behind the scenes, right? So from that perspective, we'll have to just wait and see what happens. And again, I think the interesting thing would be whether a combination of whether he wants to stay and whether Lucknow want him to stay as well. So that's the big question mark with regards to Lucknow going forward, this auction, retentions, and so on and so forth.
Okay, let me just get Jeet's thoughts about KL Rahul generally, because there are three parts to look at him. One, the wicketkeeper, one, the captain, one, the batter. The batter, of course, it comes down to skill and will. And many people are questioning his will in terms of just getting on with it. Because we've seen two stalwarts of Indian cricket in this very IPL, Rohit and Virat, really make adjustments to their game, Jeet. So why can't KL Rahul take a page out of that book and be like, look, let me just put up all my timidity aside. Let me just go for it. Do you think he just values his wicket so much? Sometimes you don't have to put a price on your wicket as much as you think in T20s, right? And sports fan, thanks for this comment. I would love to see him in RCB, but again, it's all about the mentality. It's all about him having role clarity with whatever he does. Go out there and get me a 40 of 20 balls. I'm fine with it. I don't want you to just be an anchor, because ultimately we have Virat to do that, in all honesty. So just coming back to KL Rahul and the three parts over there, we'll just finish up with the captaincy bit. But as a batter, Jeet, do you think it's skill or will for Rahul which is costed in this IPL?
So I don't think skill has ever been a question with KL Rahul. When it comes to a batter having minimal weaknesses, I would believe KL Rahul is one of them. He's got very less weaknesses in terms of technicalities when it's involved, either against pace or against spin or as his game as a whole. But without taking names, I do remember one of the guys who was calling the shots of the franchise telling me that they had asked KL Rahul to change his intent in the power play a few years ago, but KL Rahul didn't follow that. He wanted to stick to his same pattern because he was more comfortable with that. And that is kind of reflecting on her numbers as well. So again, that statement of strike rate is overrated, we can see that. A strike rate of 136 in the tournament where openers have absolutely smashed it doesn't cut out. So at the end of the day, he needs to realize that the game is changing. It's no more that 160, 170 game. If you are an opener, you've got to maximize the power play. Look at somebody like Jake Fraser Megog playing his first ever season of the IPL. That guy has come to the party straight away. He has absolutely tore down the opponent. So you need to change. And like you mentioned, Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, even at their age, are trying to innovate. They know where the weaknesses are and they know where they need to make a change. And it was very, very evident in what they were trying to do. Eventually, whether it reflects on numbers or not, I don't know about that. But with KL Rahul, it was again not visible, barring those few games where he did try to, go bonkers first up. But at the end of the day, like one of the comments mentioned, after the World Cup squad was announced, he went back to the same patterns of just trying to see off the power play, build an innings, and then try to launch. But he never got to that stage where he could launch. He was dismissed before that. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think skill set is a huge issue with KL Rahul, but somewhere mindset is, and he needs to change that very quickly in order to be a very, very impactful opener and also stake a claim for India in the future in the T20 format.
No, 100%. And no wonder he's, of course, been axed from that squad. And KL fans, I feel for you because he certainly has the talent and potential to, again, reinvigorate himself to that 2018, like Akshay points out here. And Ashutosh Bajpayee saying KL is a samurai who resented the intervention of gunpowder, being cheeky over there. Get KL into RCB and build the best choking side ever, saying Chant, who's still crying of course, Mumbai and Liverpool. So apologies, man, Chant. Tough day for you. Next, before we get into the bowlers and the retentions, final word with you on KL Rahul, the captain, because normally we assess captains in the IPL through not just success, but also innovative field placements, their gut feel in terms of changing the options, how they really marshal their resources. Did you see any of that come to the fore with KL? Do you think he actually had a really, really good game as a captain, or on the contrary, a really shit game where he was found out tactically?
Well, the SRS game, in terms of tactically, you did not even go to Navin Ulak for like 4 or 5 hours. What are you thinking? No matter what is happening in terms of first over, okay, second over, okay. But then you seeing things happen, you still stuck to no, I'll stick to this, I'll stick to this. So eventually, I think as a captain, I had a lot of high hopes on KL because, so to speak, there have been a couple of instances in the past when he's led India and you felt that, okay, he has that intuition in terms of, I'll go for this, it may work, it may not work. But I don't think we see it enough in the IPL. I don't know what is the reason, whether it's, and again, that's the bit about the IPL, right? There are times where you don't know actually who's calling these shots, whether it is the captain or it is just the pre-planned thing. Because that you saw in the SRS game, that did not look to me like a call that was taken on the field. That looked like a plan that first 4 overs, these two guys, this guy, khatam, let's stick to that. But then if you're seeing something not go right, you need to change. So again, it's probably reflective of the personality or the mindset that he has, that he wants to hold on to what he knows best, but it may not be the worst time for him to change. And I'm happy that he's honest enough to admit that he's got it wrong. But what I'm looking forward to is the change. Because again, as Jeet said, I have always been one of the high horses guy for KL Rahul. He can do it, he can do it, he can do it. Now, whether he wants to do it, he has to answer it.
I just want to add one thing there. So, as Nick's mentioned, that's why I still rate Rahul the captain pretty highly. In the sense, there were games even this season. I think the RCB game defending 175, if it was not wrong, I think he had a really good cap. I know it was helped by the fact that Mayank Yadav blew some of RCB's batters, but even then, the way he used M. Siddharth specifically for Kohli and Faf, certain moves were really good. And through the season as well, he had some, as Nick's pointed, that specific game against Sunrisers where they got blown away. There were a couple of bad games, but overall, going forward, I still think wherever he does end up next season, he still is definitely a batter. There's things to work on, but as a captain, I think he's still a very solid captain. Someone who you could definitely build your side around, because he's got that intuition. I think as Nick, especially in those India games where he's led, right, I think the South Africa series was one where it was a very understrength India team. We had I think with 4 or 5 debutants, if I'm not wrong, especially in the batting lineup, and he still managed to get those guys together, and India won an ODI series there. So from that perspective, I still think as a captain, there's still a lot of positives. But again, if he sorts his batting out in the first place, that's what's going to help him, even from a confidence perspective as a captain, right? Because your primary skill is still your batting, right? So yeah, should be interesting. We'll see next 12 months of KL Rahul's career. Just like his last 4-5 years is going to be another chapter, I feel. So we'll see how it goes.
No, indeed. And the message here is loud and clear from us at cricket.com. The fact that we all love KL Rahul, but get your batting sorted, mate. We would absolutely adore you, especially me, coming from the same city and all of that from you. Avan saying randomly KL Keda, and then Ashutosh Bhattacharya saying when the chips are down, a coach like JL seems to be out. He didn't do a thing at Headingley and Gabba as well. No marshalling of the troops. And speaking of Rahul Cricket goes on to say, saying, sir, it's time for the T20 World Cup 2024. IPL is just for entertainment. That we'll be doing previews for as well, Rahul. So join us for that and hit the bell icon and subscribe if you guys are new. And Akshay going on to say, I think he should give up captaincy and play under a good captain like Pat Cummins, as he can give the authority to go all guns blazing. People blame 2023 World Cup loss on KL Kedar, but there was another choker playing with him known as King. Chachan just wants to be blasphemous. And our former Indian cricketer Chika is a great fan of Rahul. He used to praise him every time, but this time Chika has no point to defend Rahul, and we can see a comeback from KL in the next season. And Tushar going on to add, saying the way T20 is going, if KL didn't change his mindset soon, I don't see him playing IPL in a couple of years' time. Look, more the merrier in terms of comments, and it's good to see all of you guys on this Thursday evening. We'll just wrap up LSG by talking about their bowlers and, of course, the retentions before we talk about Delhi and Chennai. So all you fans from the capital, all you fans from the city that I'm currently at, I'm not going to be moving my curtain to see how gloomy or, of course, sultry it is in the evening here. But speaking of LSG's bowlers, none of them featured in the top 15 wicket takers. It was this man who, of course, ended up taking 14 wickets for them in the 10 matches. Naveen Haq, I mean, Virat's really, really good friend, put it that way. But again, if I was doing this preview and I had no idea about my stats, I wouldn't have guessed in a million years that Naveen would have been their top wicket taker. So, Nix, let me start with you, because again, like we mentioned at the top of the show, amazing bowlers that they've had at their disposal. Few cropped up in the last couple of years. This year, we, of course, saw Mayank Yadav. Last year, Yash Thakur. They have the experience of Krunal Pandya. Ravi Bishnoi, his fielding was shit, but he was all right with the ball, you would say. Why didn't it work that much? And why do you think they weren't even in contention to have anyone in the playoff race for the purple cap, beg your pardon? Because you look at all those names there, not one LSG guy finds himself. Why is that in the top 15 wicket takers?
Yeah, because they were too focused on trying to give everybody a game or a go in terms of the set batters, set options that they wanted to take with. Sometimes you saw Mohsin, and again, now Mohsin Khan is the kind of guy that you want to be playing for you every single game because of the skills that he brings to the table. But he also brings fitness concerns to the table, and that I don't think is very, very handy for any side to have. So in terms of injuries, I'd probably give it to KL Rahul. That is, he was probably disappointed in terms of disappointed to see both him and Mayank miss crucial games for them. And see, no matter what you say, they did not have those big names in the market that, we have this guy, we have that guy. Naveen is primarily your end overs back end bowler. But that you had to bowl him in front speaks volumes about your own squad construction, that you did not trust Arshad Khan enough. If Mohsin was injured, who was the backup to him? You got Matt Henry very late in the pack as a replacement, and then you gave him new ball. He still didn't do much because it is always a case of just too many things being tried at the same time. There were times when Krunal Pandya opened the bowling. Manimanan Siddharth came in, bowled, went away. There were games where Bishnoi bowled only 2 overs. So how will you have any bowler in your setup in terms of, you look at them, orange cap, purple cap, both. It will rarely be somebody else but KL, Stoinis or Puri, because they don't trust anybody else. Because it's eventually the same guys who get to bowl the most number of overs. And so you'll rarely find them in the purple cap because, like you saw with Mumbai, there are attacks where you can sit on them. You can sit on the one player and be like, okay, we'll go after the others. With Lucknow, it was everybody. You could go after legit everyone. The Shamar Joseph game. I mean, I'm all for giving, guys free run. But you're giving the poor chap the first over. And he bowls a no ball and the over goes for plenty. And what did he do after him? Just back. No packing at all. So I think it was a case of just trusting only a limited number of people. I agree they had a great bowling core. They still have it. But if they don't manage injuries and they don't trust spinners, I don't know how much I can emphasize on the Ravi Bishnoi part, because I think Ravi Bishnoi was completely sold the dummy by KL Rahul there, because hardly gave him enough confidence to come into the game and bowl the way we want Ravi Bishnoi to bowl. The Ravi Bishnoi that we know would bowl flat, fast, quick across batters. This Ravi Bishnoi is bowling full, he's trying to bowl wide. This is not the Bishnoi we know. So clearly there is something going wrong. And if the captain can't figure it out, I mean, what else are you there for in terms of the management also? You can try and change techniques for post for people, whether it is Huda or Padikal, but this is your primary role, right? Sort your best players out. What did they do about it? Nothing.
Yeah, Jeet, Anirudh, it just makes you think about the lack of oomph in this LSG attack. And normally you look at oppositions on paper, especially the bowling attacks, and it gives you confidence at times, it gives you conviction as a fan. But this time around, LSG, they had good names, great household names. Krunal Pandya, Ravi Bishnoi. You, of course, have someone like Naveen who can chip in. And then not to forget the fast bowlers that they've been unearthing. Having said all of that, why do you think it's not come to fruition this year? And why do you think they just look bang average in terms of their bowling numbers? Jeet, I'll start with you here.
I don't think they had a proper leader of the attack, right? There was no leader of the pace attack. There was the spinners who were completely struggling. So before the tournament started, we saw at quite a few names that were like a certain lock to make it to the Indian T20 squad, and one of the names was Ravi Bishnoi. We thought this guy is a lock, right, for the T20 World Cup, but he had a torrid run. So, like Nick's mentioned, that the utilization was not so good, but even Bishnoi didn't instill a lot of confidence in the way he was bowling. Either he was too short or he was too wide, and he got bashed. Second was Krunal Pandya. I put Krunal Pandya in the same basket as Ravindra Jadeja. When there are tracks where you need to vary your pace, this guy doesn't think. He's just firing every ball into a 95 or at over 100 Ks. You've got to adjust. You are experienced, so show that experience. There is Harpreet Bhatia who's doing that. There is Swapnil Singh who showed that adjustment. But Krunal Pandya and Ravindra Jadeja are still in that same basket, who are not willing to adjust to the pitches they've got. So at the end of the day, I mean,
Sorry, Jeet, Chennai will come. I'll rant on that for sure, 100%.
yeah, so Krunal Pandya again kept it tight. His economy was really good considering the standards of IPL we had, where the batters were going really gung ho. So an economy of over 7.5 is very good. But at the end of the day, you are being looked as somebody who need to pick wickets because you are the experienced spinner, and we didn't get that. Mayank Yadav was a breath of fresh air. Again, he was injured in the last 2 seasons, which is why he was not getting a chance, because he was in and out and there was plenty of rehabilitation that was going on. So good on Justin Langer to at least give him a go, and it worked out really well. But besides that, again, there was no leader of the pace attack. Yash Thakur doesn't have enough IPL experience, and it showed on how he struggled, barring that 5-4 that he got. He was nowhere after that. Naveen ul Haq, again, a very hit and miss this time around as well. The utilization, like Nick mentioned, was again not so good. Mohsin Khan, very injury prone. Arshad Khan came in at the back end. So one of the big misses was Avesh Khan. Avesh Khan going to RR left a gaping hole in their particular pace attack, and also the late pullout of David Willey. That was another experienced new ball bowler was gone. It was Matt Henry who came in at the back end and got a few games. That's it. So what they really
Mark Wood
lacked
as
over
well.
there was Mark Wood as well, another guy who pulled out. So they were lacking those leaders which they could have had at the start of the tournament, but they were quite unfortunate with those guys pulling out, or some like Mayank Yadav also getting an injury midway through the tournament. So it didn't really work
I just
out
want to
well.
add one thing. I think Jeet and Nikhil covered a lot with the bowling. Just one thing. So the funniest thing, the fact that they don't have a leader is actually even represented by the number of wickets taken by all of their bowlers. I think Bishnoi has about 13 wickets. Krunal's got 10. Yash Thakur's also got 14 wickets, just like Naveen ul Haq. Mohsin's also got. Everyone's kind of split the wickets amongst each other. The problem is no one stood out. And when your batting hasn't quite clicked, you needed some of the bowling attack. But then again, you could say that the likes of Naveen and Mohsin and Yash Thakur, all of these aren't established bowlers. Only at Lucknow have they even got an opportunity in the IPL level. And Mayank being the X factor was a big boost for them in those 4 or 5 games which he played. But then unfortunately, with his speed also comes the potential of injury, and we saw what happened with him throughout the season, right? So again, it's a bowling attack with a lot of excitement, especially because so I've come up with the retentions here as well after this for Lucknow, and I've retained some very exciting names. And for the future, it's great. But it's just that around these pieces, they need to find other experienced pieces who could fit in and make it a much more competitive, because they've got the players to potentially make the playoffs and even more. Because even at the start of the show, I said that even if Lucknow had won the Delhi game and made the playoffs, I still think they would have probably lost the eliminator, right? So their aim should obviously try to get better. So from their perspective, because it's a good team. I mean, if it was like, say, with all due respect, it was like Punjab, them making the playoffs itself is a big thing. Like with all due respect to Punjab, and even RCB this season, I think even you would agree, Avnish. This season, I think the team wasn't a title-winning team on paper. Whereas with Lucknow, you at least had a core which you felt was a lot better, but then they kind of underperformed. So that is the perspective with Lucknow here, I guess.
No, I agree with you, boys, and I think you guys have summed up the bowling aspect pretty well, because you look at LSG in the seasons gone by, they definitely missed the services of Avesh, and even though they had those names, and there were a couple of silver linings in the Mayank Yadav story, and of course people praising Mohsin, and rightly so, it just didn't work out for them. So let us know your thoughts as well, and like this video if you guys think we're doing a good job by breaking LSG down. We have 2 more teams to go, but before we finalize LSG and finish up on them, I should say, let's just take a look at the retentions that we think at cricket.com they should definitely kind of go with heading into that mega auction. Let's put it up in terms of that graphic. Now, the names...
So I'll just cover it.
Yeah, go on. One second.
No,
so let me just set some context, because you guys have been mentioning all these names throughout this preview so far, and no prizes for guessing who the 2 star overseas players are, Puran and Stoinis. But the 4 Indians over there, are you guys in agreement that it should be this? Anirudh, you first, and then Nikhil, and then Jeet.
So it was me who came up with the list. So it's Nix and Jeet. So I'll just give a justification for all of the 6 anyway. Just a quick one. I think it's very difficult. I'm hoping that Rahul gets his mojo back as a batter. If not till 2018, I still think there's a space for him to improve, even if still not that level. I think it will be very difficult to replace KL Rahul if you let go of him. So I want to keep him if I can. I think Bishnoi is too young, too good a player to, even though he's had as Jeet, I'm right between where Jeet and Nick said. Jeet said he didn't bowl enough. Nick said that he wasn't given an opportunity enough. I agree with both of them in the sense I'm right in the middle. I don't think he was given enough faith, but at the same time, he didn't bowl well enough to merit that much faith either. There were times where he really bowled poorly as well. But I still have seen enough in the last 3-4 years of Bishnoi to say that he's going to be a great spinner for India one day. So Bishnoi, obviously, Mayank and Mohsin, you've invested so much in them. There are injury concerns over both of them. But if you let go of them, they've got so much star potential that you cannot let go of them, right? So that's my perspective with Mayank and Mohsin. So the 2 foreigners, Nicholas Puran, I don't think I have to say anything. Is probably one of the best 3 T20 batters going around. So Nicholas Puran. The Stoinis one, I was a little unsure because he's 34 right now, turning 35 next year. So that was one I was unsure in the sense, can you find another player in the auction? But the fact that continuity helps, and he's been with Lucknow for a long time, and he's actually stepped up compared to other franchises. He's probably done his best at Lucknow, and the fact that he stepped up, I think that's the reason I stick with Stoinis. I'm not the most convinced by him just because of the age factor, and there will be other options, especially overseas top order batsmen who will be available in the auction, but because he's got the ability to even bowl 2 or 3 overs if needed, especially if the impact player does get removed next season. That's exactly why I'm retaining Stoinis. Not the most convinced, but the other 5 I'm pretty sure about it. But of course, Nix and Jeet can give their perspective about that.
Yeah, Nix, I just want to ask you, if you were Mr. Goenka and if you were looking at the mega option, would you be happy with this 6? Because if there are any breathing down their backs, who is it and why? And also, addressing the elephant in the room, is KL Rahul part of your retention plans if you're the LSG owner?
If I am the owner, hopefully not someday, but of some other team, maybe yes. So I would want KL Rahul because, as he said, as Anirudh said, the skill set that KL Rahul brings, again, the mindset is, and all of that is a problem, but that can be addressed when you just sit down and talk it out in terms of this is what I expect of you, just do that. So that can be done. But what I think there is in terms of people who will be retained, if KL Rahul stays there, is I am very sure of Bishnoi and Krunal Pandya are both staying there. If KL Rahul is there. If he's not there, KL Rahul, maybe Bishnoi definitely goes off with him to RCB because I think that's more very, very likely. Krunal Pandya could be a guy that they may look out as an option in terms of retention and also make him captain. Again, it's not a road that has not been gone for.
I think Puran was set as vice captain, so Puran would take over, I think.
Yeah, again, it's a call. Again, they can do anything, bro. They can replace MS. Who captaincy is just a matter of giving the cap. Anyone can take those decisions. So Puran, of course, I agree with. So for me, it's very difficult to pick both Mayank and Mohsin. I understand a lot of heart there in terms of efforts have gone by in terms of taking care of them. But if it's only 5, I'm not sure if you can retain both these guys who are very injury prone. So you'll have to unfortunately probably take a call in between one of them. And I would be very, very keen on keeping someone like an Ayush Badoni because he's been the guy who's come good for them in current situations. He's been the guy who's shown the metal under pressure that I will be the guy who will take you to a 50 score, whether it is the DC game or it is the Chennai game last year. He's shown enough. And if you're losing out on KL Rahul, you need Indian batters. You see how the other Indian batters have gone for them, whether it is Patikal, whether it is Huda. So you need someone who's set in stone. Just give him a good role, a good spot, whether it is 4, whether it is 3, give him a good role and he'll come good. So for me, if KL Rahul stays, the list changes entirely because KL will stay with Bishnoi, Krunal, and maybe one pacer. If KL goes, Badoni is definitely getting retained. And Stoinis, if you're going to bat him at 3, keep him. If not, release him. There is no point of wasting Stoinis down the order because even with the new ball, Stoinis bowled a couple of games with the new ball. It's not bad. But then is he your best option to you are saying you'll not get other options? I think you will. But again, it depends on
That's
who
why
plays.
I'm not convinced by Stoinis. It was more of the
No,
fact that
there is an option. We don't know who will play for Perth Scorchers next year. So whoever plays can come in.
Jeet, where do you stand in this? Because look, they've made their pros and cons for each player essentially in this review so far. Beg your pardon. But in these 6, I know it's super important to have an Indian spinner, so you don't want to sell Bishnoi. Mayank Yadav, best bowling average, minimum 4 games this season. So he's a lock-in. Obviously, the caveat being injury prone. And similar with Mohsin, who's had 2-3 good seasons right now in the IPL. And then the international guys pick themselves. Where is there a chance to disagree with your friends here and tell them, listen, they've got a couple of retentions wrong, especially Anirudh Srinivas?
So again, it's basically a call between Mayank Yadav and Mohsin Khan. Both are very injury prone. I've watched them in the domestics as well. They have a few good games and they're off. Someone like Mohsin Khan has had a history in this mat. He bowled like 3 overs or 4 overs, and after every over he used to walk off. He used to be on the sidelines, and then again he used to come and start playing again and or bowl another over. So basically, they had to take a call between one of the two. I'll stick to Mayank Yadav and let go of Mohsin Khan. That would be my one call. In Mohsin's place, I've got 2 options. One is again an untested Prerak marker, and second is Ayush Badoni. Again, I'll back Ayush Badoni purely for the fact that this guy is very talented. His utilization got better as the tournament progressed and he showed enough capability. So he's somebody who could bat. He's very versatile in nature. So he could bat at number 3, he could bat at number 4, he could even do the finisher's job. He's good enough to play all of those roles. So in place of Mohsin Khan,
you're on mute, Avnish.
Sorry, I was just going to say, can't you aim to buy Badoni back, Jeet? I mean, I know there'll be others kind of looking for someone like him, but where do you sit on that? The fact that these owners also need to take a call and be like, okay, fine, I don't know if the right to match will happen, but if they really want to let go of the player, but they want him back, someone like a Badoni, someone like, I don't know, even a Prerak Mankad, do you think other teams will straight away identify that opportunity and be like, listen, he's not going back to LHG, I'll pay top dollar for him?
Badoni will be a lot more expensive this time around. Not to forget, he was scouted by Gautam Gambhir and Vijay Daya. So Gautam Gambhir, for all you know, might want him for KKR. So I don't want to give him that chance whatsoever because I know what this guy is capable of. And he showed those glimpses as well in this tournament. So I don't want to let go of Badoni. That's for sure. Coming to Marcus Stoinis, again, I'm very split between Marcus Stoinis and Kyle Mayers. Marcus Stoinis, again, I'm not so convinced of Stoinis' ability of batting in the top 3. Smashing it down under back in Australia and the BBL as an opener is a different game altogether. Doing that over here, whenever there are testing pitches involved, you will be found out, and that's exactly what we saw. He got a flat track at Chepauk. He played a wonderful knock. But what followed after that was, again, tracks which had something in it, and he started to struggle. So if you want to have him in the side, I don't mind Stoinis batting at maybe 4 or 5. Otherwise, there is no point. So again, I would rather prefer Kyle Mayers to have that left-hand, right-hand combination. Of course, I'm just hoping that Justin Langer starts valuing him a lot more. So it's subject to that. But I'll prefer Kyle Mayers over Marcus Stoinis to have that aggressive opening option alongside KL Rahul. And again, Kyle Mayers is somebody who can chip in with the ball as well. An over or 2 in the power play is what he has done in the past. So I'd rather go for him over Stoinis.
Okay. Shlok Barge, meanwhile, saying Stoinis plays a pure batter. He can be released. You can always go for Ibrook or Brathwaite. Meanwhile, Ashutosh Patra is saying LHG has to retain Badoni, I'm guessing, because his previous government was saying Badoni might go for a minimum 7 crores to PBKS or DC. And Ramana going on to say CSK will jump in for Badoni. Excellent pace hitter in the end. Only time will tell who will go for Badoni. I don't know whether Gambhir will go back for Badoni because Jeet mentioned it there, but they still have people like Ankrish Raghuvanshi as well in that KKR wings. Only time will tell again with them how they will go about their attentions. Right. Done and dusted with LSG and time to move up the table with regards to how it all finished in IPL 2024. And we're talking about Delhi Capitals next because I know Shubh isn't part of this particular review, but he must be absolutely livid with regards to how certain results went their way. Let's take a look at that from a Delhi Capital perspective. And Nix, I'll start with you here because Delhi heading into the season, everyone thought, yeah, it's going to be Warner and Shaw. We weren't even talking about Jake Fraser-McGurk, of course, until we saw him do what he did. But the way they started the season, do you think that really cost them when they were playing catch-up cricket? I'm sure when we do the review for RCB and it'll look similar but worse, Delhi, they just never got a momentum that they needed. And then they were always playing catch-up cricket. Few results going their way. They enjoyed that 4 out of 5 wins in the middle of that season. But where did it go wrong for Delhi Capitals next? Because again, even from a fixture standpoint, different teams, different conditions. But do you think they were exposed or do you see it differently?
Well, they were firstly well done to Papa Ponting for at least getting one Aussie right in terms of Jake Fraser Maker. That was good. Things just worked out for them and this season has looked a lot better than what it could have, the way it started. And again, you always knew, and again, I'm sorry I'm not being very harsh, but there are some Aussies who you cannot trust in terms of lasting a season. You have enough additions, and if you still rely on them and expect them to bowl also and take wicket also and still think they'll last the season, then good luck to you for doing that. And again,
Name and shame, Nikhil. Name and
it's
shame.
already out in the market. Every time there is anything that doesn't go their way, somebody holds and they just go again. We don't know how much of this is always happening, but it's happened in the past. You'll have to really move away from certain, which is why I said the same thing for Mohsin and Mayank as well. They are also Indians. I'm not saying that, okay, I'm saying this only because they're an Australian. But if you know there are injury prone players, you cannot build your franchise plans according in with them at the center of it. So I hope going forward, Mitch Marsh can spend a lot of time playing for Australia. Lots of love and good fitness for him. But maybe IPL is not cut out because what you're trying to then do is just trying to bet people up and down the order. How many of us expected Abhishek Porel, Jake Fraser-McGurk to have the season that they have? None of us would have heard coming. Even the ardent Delhi fans wouldn't have seen it coming. They lost Ishan to injury for a majority period of time. He came back to dismiss the big guns as and when he wanted to, in terms of, oh, I'll get KL, I'll get Virat Kohli. So they missed that. I think Rafiq Salam was a good addition in the later half. In the start, they went how we all predicted them to be in terms of their two high variants. Tristan Stubbs was great. Akshar Patel's usage got better, but some of the captaincy calls as well in terms of Lalit Yadav will still play. Just ensure you don't build your franchise around just certain set of people who have, again, it's not a shame on them, it's a reflection of how you're trusting them to do difficult jobs. Now you can get better people for them. Why are you always just revolving around them in terms of, no, they will only be my first choice? You saw that with Prithvi Shaw as well. Now he's had a decent season, he's back, he didn't play, and eventually just was out of the side. You have no idea what's happening. David Warner played the first half, got injured hand, didn't play. They did not even feel to do anything about it in terms of, okay, David Warner, big name, let's give him another season. But Ricky Ponting has now got 3 seasons without qualifying, and he's had decent squads. And decent squads say, of course, it means 5 openers, four wicket keepers. What is Shai Hope doing? For all the love of God, he can go on and win the T20 World Cup with West Indies, but you need those kind of players. So I think with Delhi, it's always like it's just like how it's Lucknow that we have a certain image of players in mind. They'll do well for us and we'll back them. Unfortunately, 2 people got injured. Brook backed out. Lungi and Giri got missed, and hence they got those replacements in place and they had a run. So I'm not sure what to make of it. I'm not too big on the captaincy changes as well. There were times where Rishabh Pant was batting lower for no reason at all. So again, a season of too many what ifs, but again, something that's happened in the past. Hopefully, they'll rebuild better. They have a good core for that, though.
They do have a good core. When you look back at this season, the 14 games that they played, Anirudh and Jeet, with regards to Delhi Capitals and how it all unfurled for them, you'll remember this season for a few things. Obviously, Jake Fraser-McGurk. Some people would obviously say Abhishek Purell. People would look at this in terms of the comeback season for Pant after that horrific accident that he had, and how he really took to it as a batter, as a captain, as a wicketkeeper. And then from the offset, you would see Ricky Ponting and Saurav Ganguly kind of clash heads at times, even though they were just in the same camp in terms of what should be their selections, what should be their tactics. There was one game, I feel it was absolutely crazy to see Ganguly, Ponting, and Pant all just kind of going at each other.
It was KKR.
It was KKR, wasn't it? So, I mean, when you look at Delhi and fine, 14 points, 7 wins, and all of that, it's not such a bad season. But like Nick's mentioned, 3 seasons right now that they haven't qualified under Ponting. Ponting's now got about 7 or 8 years for DC, correct me if I'm wrong. So when will they pull the plug? Because even people in the comments saying Mike Hesson incoming for DC, people taking the piss out of Ponting, saying Ponting, why does he need to be promoting back full time? You know what I mean? Everyone's not had enough. And even if you talk to some of the most ardent DC fans, the two that I know, Gurkirat and Shubh, saying sack Ponting. He really needs to be, of course, held accountable. So where do you stand in that? Jeet, I'll start with you, and then we'll, of course, move on to Anirudh.
Look, so in the IPL, in franchise cricket, and in particular IPL, how it works is basically a coaching staff is given a 2 or 3 year stretch. You need to produce results in that time. If you can't, you are out. We have seen that with PBKs. We saw that with LSG as well, despite them making it into the top 4 in the first 2 seasons. They were shafted off. With Ricky Ponting, we are looking at 7 seasons without having a lot of success. So I would agree with Gurkirat and Shubh. It's time to pull the plug. I think he has had a very, very long run. He has had a very long stretch without having any titles or any trophy to show for it, or any even convincing performance in a particular season. You can't be calling those shots. I mean, there are obvious ego clashes that are happening within the staff as well, or with certain players, and it's very, very evident. But yeah, I mean, 7 years, I believe, if I'm not wrong, is a long run without having produced any results. So
let me just ask you this, because when we go back to that result sort of depiction, where do you think Ricky Ponting will be looking at these games and be like, shit, we should have got to act better that day? I know it's all ifs and buts, and hindsight's a beautiful thing. But when you look back at this, even hypothetically, if you're a Delhi fan, which one really gives you the yips, so to speak?
It's the first 5 games. I mean, look at the first 5 games. You see a lot of reds in there. That's how they started. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible run to lose 4 out of the first 5 games. And that is what set the ball rolling. Luckily, what followed after that was a home stretch. In the home games, the 7 home games they played, including 2 at Vizag, they were able to muster 5 wins. And that is where the turnaround happened. Or that played a huge part in the turnaround. But the first 5 games is where they got off to a very, very bad start, and that is something they need to look at. But again, what played a huge part in ensuring those kind of losses or resulting in those kind of losses was poor and questionable tactics. How on earth did they start up with, Ricky Bowie? It was very, very surprising. It just didn't make sense. Eventually, even in the latter half, they had Lalit Yadav coming in for a few games, and the way he was utilized didn't make sense. Sumit Kumar started. I was, again, very big on Sumit Kumar because I've watched him in the domestics. But if you're having a domestic player who has done really well in domestics in the season that just preceded the IPL, and if you're not utilizing him where he actually succeeded, then what's the point of having him in the 11? Sumit Kumar is a new ball bowler and a lower middle order basher. This guy didn't get any overs in the new ball. He was being introduced in the 11th over or after the power play. What's the point of having him, right? He has succeeded in certain phases in domestics. That is where his skills are. That is where his speciality is. He wasn't used that way. And this is despite having that Bengal contingent in the coaching staff. So it didn't make sense. Ricky Bowie again. What were you doing? How does those kind of things happen? So tactics played a huge part in those first 5 games and why those kind of results unfold eventually for them.
And sorry, but I love spinach and I love Popeye. But what is Gulbuddin Naib doing there?
Yeah, seriously. Actually, but it just makes you think, right? Because ultimately, Delhi fans would be like, "Bhai, we were so close, and it was net run rate which cost us." Anirudh, I just want to ask you, if you look at their results as well, that 106-run loss to KKR, that really, I know it was early on in the season, but you look at all the other losses, so to speak, wasn't that bad, or was it bad? 67 runs to SRH, 47 to RCB, but that 106 one stands out. Do you think they could have got away with it at the end, like how RCB did? But what was lacking for them to make that top four?
I think the 106 was a proper bash. In the 67, if you actually followed the game, they were on course to chase 260. They were about 150 in about 11 overs. They needed 110 in the last 10, but they completely collapsed after that. But then when it comes to Delhi, right, I'm not looking at it just from a results perspective. I think I expected them to have a really bad season. From that perspective, I'm even surprised they won 7 games and hold my hands up from that perspective. But then all of this is because of the fact that they had really poor 22 auction in that they had a really good team from say 19 to 21. They made a couple of finals as well. They were consistently in those playoffs for those 3 years, but then they had a really poor 22 auction and that cost them, right? So they've overachieved based on what they have as a team, but then the team in the first place has been built by a guy who's there for 7 years, and that's where the question for Ponting is. So I think that pretty much sums it up for Delhi and Ponting and what's there for the future.
Okay, let's move on to that top batter because Rishabh Pant was, of course, going to be garnering all the attention, like I mentioned, heading into the season, coming back, need to get miles in his legs. He got runs with the bat as well, 446 to be particular. And remember, he's captaining the side. So that 88 reminds us of what he can do for India in the T20 World Cup. Also, dare I say, good strike rate, Pant-esque, so to speak, in that 350s for good measure. Just a little bit about Pant, given the fact that he has got the nod for the Caribbean guys. And even if you look at it from a DC lens, an India lens, how do you assess Rishabh Pant's season? First with the bat in hand and then as a captain. Because at times, I know he was probably being schooled by the two principals outside, Ganguly and Ponting, and be like, aise mat kar, wo idhar se la, udhar se jao, and all of that stuff. But ultimately, Pant is a batter and captain. All your thoughts. We'll start this time in reverse order. Anirudh first, Jeet, and then next.
Before the season started, I was just saying that I'm not going to judge Rishabh the batter at all. I'm just glad to see him back play cricket. I'm still surprised he made the World Cup squad. Not because he's not good enough. It's just because I feel India have rushed him. It's the classic BCI desperation of trying to win an ICC trophy. And Rishabh, at his absolute best, is one of those game changers who could win you a game, a semi-final, a final. He still could. I just feel that India have rushed him. I'm just glad a couple of innings were outstanding. The game against Gujarat stands out. The game which really kicked him off was the CSK game where he struggled initially. I think it was about 30 of 30 balls. And then he hit Patirana and got a momentum. He ended up with 50 of 30 or so. And then the game after that where they lost the KKR game, that's when he got into Venkatesh and scored about 28, 30 runs in that over. And from there on, he had a really solid season. It wasn't outstanding by any stretch of imagination. He had similar issues to what he had before the injury in terms of the ball going away from him being a big issue, him trying to always slog across square leg mid wicket. That's the areas he tries to access and he struggles outside the off them. Same issues persisted, but I cannot be too harsh on him simply because this is a bloke who hasn't touched the bat for the best part of 18 months, right? So from that perspective, he's probably done really well with the bat. I'm not going to talk about his India selection at all. We've done enough chat about India and his selection a lot. I'm just happy to see him back playing cricket, and he's more or less, let's say, on the way to being the cricketer he is. Hopefully, he was say 18 months ago. So yeah, from that perspective, just positive for Rishabh on the batter.
Jeet, where do you stand in Pant? And not just this season, but going ahead as well. There were a lot of rumors about Pant exiting Delhi and then going to fulfill another franchisee's sort of demands. But do you think Rishabh Pant will stick with Delhi? Because, of course, he's been associated with this franchise for a while right now. And how is he going to remember this season? Is it just going to be the fact that, look, I've come back into the game and I've done myself proud personally, individually, but my team couldn't get across the line, so that isn't really my fault? Do you think he'll be looking at that himself?
So I'll be surprised if someone like Parth Jindal lets go of him. He has invested a lot in him. So I'll be very surprised if Rishabh Pant decides to make a move to some other franchise. First of all, one thing that is quite certain is that he's already got captaincy assured with DC. Again, quite raw in that. Whether he was good or bad, we'll come to that later. But I will be very surprised if Parth Jindal lets go of him. He's going to try his best to keep him intact with the team. But secondly, again, great to have Rishabh Pant back. What he went through was absolutely horrendous, and to make a quick recovery and be back for the IPL season and put in a performance like that was very impressive. Again, it was a very mixed bag. I mean, the overall numbers may not really sum it up, but getting 446 runs at a strike rate of 155 was phenomenal. But initially, we did see phases where he was struggling to hit the spinners, and that's a telltale sign of somebody who's quite trusty. Because if Rishabh Pant is struggling to hit the spinners, then again it shows that he's kind of struggling a bit. But as the tournament progressed, he got better and better, and we started seeing those old shades of Rishabh Pant again come into the fore. And as a whole, it was a pretty good season if you look at the numbers. And even for DC, I believe it was quite good as compared to some of the other batters who eventually finished with. So again, really good. And look, again, to be fair, he did warrant a T20 World Cup selection. There was, of course, KL Rahul in contention, but the top order is already jam-packed. Middle order is where the gaps were. And with Jitesh Sharma, who was, destined to make it to the squad, had a horrible run as compared to Rishabh Pant. So it was a no-brainer. But as a whole, I believe Rishabh Pant will be really happy, first of all, to get back into cricket, get the ball rolling, and have a performance like this. And I just hope that he does stay intact with DC, and at least he has a longer run as a captain.
Okay. Interesting that you say that, because if you kind of close your eyes and think about Delhi's best batter this season, everyone will say Jake Fraser-McGurk, right? But it's Pant's runs which is kind of pipped him in that regard. And Knicks, before the season started for Delhi, everyone thought it was going to be set in stone. Prithvi Shaw, David Warner opening, Mitch Marsh run down, Prithvi Shaw, beg your pardon, Rishabh Pant at 4. But how it's changed is the fact that they're looking towards the future. So you have your Jake Fraser-McGurk, you have your Abhishek Porel, then you probably have another overseas player that they could probably pick up in the mega auction, and then Rishabh Pant himself. Generally, do you think it was Delhi's batters which let that team down, or do you think it was the bowlers when you go by just pure results?
No, I think it was a mix of both. I don't think I would single out any one field, because there were games where the batting gave them enough, but the bowling wasn't too great. And it's also at times, as I said, the captaincy, the batting order, all everything of it plays a part. And the game that Anirudh touched upon, the game where they were in a great position because of Abhishek and Jake, but then Pant played in and he couldn't get going. So to me, that innings was possibly just a summary of how Delhi were in terms of this entire competition, that they gave you glimpses of absolute individual brilliance, but they failed to hit you as a side. There were games where if somebody from the top doesn't do, Stubbs does the job, but then the bowling lacks that bite, and then they end up conceding a lot of runs. I think Khalil Ahmed was also very good in terms of consistently giving them new ball wickets, but then it did not always materialize because somebody else on the other end went for a lot of runs. And I mean, we have not talked about Nokia so far. It just tells you how horrible this season was. That one of their premier overseas guy, basically two of them, David Warner and Anish Nokia, had a season to forget. So when you have your overseas contingent not even stepping up, and Mitchell Marsh, he did okay. If you want to, you have your own expectations from him. So you're not likely to push too many teams. But despite that, they were able to do it because of Jake Fraser-McGurk's very refreshing brand of batting. It's probably the type of batting Ponting always wanted to have in the side in terms of what he expected of Shaw. But then again, there are issues that you have to deal with Shaw as well, in terms of how many games are you giving him, fitness, and if you feel there is a ploy that teams will target with him. So in terms of, it was probably a mixed bag for me. For Pant, I'm not too sure, or not too less sure also, in terms of there were some great games, but there is also enough for opponents to extract that bowl wide to him, make him lose control of the bat, because it's happened. He defended one and lost control of the bat. How? It's unimaginable how you'd have something like that, but that's Rishabh Pant for you. He'll make you smile and cry at the same time, that wow, this guy is a unique phenomenon. So not too confident of his India chances, but as both of that said, very happy that he's back. I don't even think he's the best option in terms of captaincy, because as you rightly pointed out, you have to have some authority. If you have people, 2 3 people shouting their lungs out in terms of, bro, ye kya kar raha hai, usko idhar la, isko bowling kar, ye kar, to it doesn't make for a good viewing as well, because you are not sure who's taking the call here. So in terms of captaincy, I don't mind him being groomed under a better coach. I don't know if Ponting is the best coach. He could still be there, but maybe they could get a better coach.
Okay, let's see how it really goes forward for Delhi, because Rishabh Pant 100% going to be in the limelight of things with regards to this franchise and their mega auction and all of that. But by far, one of the best debut seasons by an overseas pro, Jake Fraser-McGurk, and that's how we'll just end up the Delhi's batting chat. Nix did mention a bowler over there in terms of this man being their best this season, Khalil Ahmed. He made the new ball talk. He got a couple of crucial scalps in those 17 wickets. And again, it just makes me ask you guys my next question with regards to, does he feature in your retention plans right here, right now? No, because you guys are going for Pant, Kuldeep, Akshar, Mukesh, and then, of course, the two overseas youngsters in Stubbs and Fraser McGurk. Anirudh, let me start with you here. We showed you this graphic with regards to him being Delhi's pick of the bowlers and all of that. I know Ishant Sharma turned back the clock in some games to, of course, show his pedigree and might. Does Khalil even stand a chance in terms of retention chat for Delhi heading into that auction?
I think he absolutely does. I think the other five names are nailed on: Pant, Akshar, Kuldeep. The two overseas in terms of Stubbs and Jake Fraser-McGurk. I'd be stunned if any of these five players are let go of. I think Parth Jindal needs to have a hard look at himself if any of these five players are let go of. And I hope they don't get tempted by Mitch Marsh's potential Australian performances across formats. So these five retentions are nailed on. The last retention, again, they have many options for this. You've got someone like Abhishek Porel, who definitely will still be an uncapped player, I believe, in say 6-8 months whenever the retentions are announced. You've also got Khalil Ahmed. So you've got a few options. I mean, Mukesh does a really difficult role in the sense that he's taken up the death bowling responsibilities for Delhi, and he executed pretty decently as well. He wasn't bad or anything. I just like to have Khalil Ahmed over Mukesh in terms of retention. I think this was Jeet's picks, if I'm not wrong, and I would prefer Khalil just because I think a left armer, the new ball value, and I don't think that Mukesh is that much of a upgrade in terms of bowlers, and I think Khalil's got age also on his side. So I'm just looking at left arm new ball bowler. I think he kind of ticks off a box, which is an important box to tick. So I think you can buy, because they've sorted out the top order in terms of Fraser McGurk and middle order being Stubbs. You can get an overseas bowler, hopefully someone who's a lot more consistent for them than Andrik Norkia. So I'd be looking at Khalil over Mukesh. I will try to get Mukesh back in the auction. I just think I would prefer keeping Khalil because I think he'll be slightly more expensive as well in the auction if he's let go off.
I was going to ask you, and Jeet, come here and help me out. Why would someone go for Mukesh over Khalil? I understand Mukesh has, of course, had a really good Yorker in him, and he's probably Delhi's death over bowler and all of that. But are you kind of hinging towards Mukesh or Khalil? Talk to me about your retentions, Jeet.
So again, it was a clash between Mukesh and Khalil for me as well. But the reason why Mukesh gets the nod for me is because he has been very good at the death. Now, knowing the home ground at the Arun Jaitley Stadium, which has got short dimensions, flat pitches for the most of the part, you need a good death bowler. You'll get very good bowlers with a new ball in the market. But how many genuinely good death bowlers do we have currently? Forget overseas. How many good domestic death bowlers have we got who are really good enough? You got Jasprit Bumrah, and the other name that automatically comes to my mind is Mukesh Kumar. So it's purely because of his death bowling skills and how well he has done this season as well, despite having a few injury concerns in a couple of games, which is why he gets a nod for me over Khalil Ahmed. Again, look, I mean, I can get a new ball bowler in the auction. There will be many, but death bowling options are very limited, and that's the reason why somebody like Mukesh Kumar makes the cut for me. Others were, I think, like fairly simple. Rishabh Pant, Kuldeep Yadav, Akshar Patel. Three domestic, very, very good players that will be nailed on. Abhishek Porel, again, was a very, very, 50-50 call for me. But again, he's somebody that I look to buy back at the auction. And as far as the overseas are concerned, it was a no-brainer. We've got somebody who takes care of the power play in Jake Fraser-McGurk, and we've got somebody like Tristan Stubbs who takes care of the back end of the innings. So those five are no-brainers. But again, out of Mukesh and Khalil, I'll go for Mukesh because of the reason that I mentioned.
Okay, fair enough. Pant, Kuldeep, Akshar, JFM, Stubbs, Porel, top five batters and elite spinner and all-rounder sorted saying Ashutosh. Rasik Dar was a surprise among Khalil and Ishant. His slow ball variations were well executed, saying sports fan. And Punter not staying, he already told that saying slow. Lots of news about Punter in the last couple of hours. Go check it out on cricket.com. If you guys haven't checked out our website and the app, it's brilliant. And of course, we're 700 away from 80,000 on YouTube. We've just crossed 79.3, and it's all thanks to you lovely people back home subscribing to us. And of course, we thank our panelists as ever, in this case, Jeet, Anirudh, and Nix as well. Nix, just to add to that attention bit, and before you come in, let me just take Ramana's comment saying, Purell is a rarer commodity. Indian keeper bat who opens, he should be retained ahead of Mukesh. Purell is tougher to be brought back. That's the point. Yet again, similar question that I asked you, Nix, for the LSG. If you were Parth Jindal, what would you do? And would you be looking at these kind of options that we just showcased on the screen?
Yeah, I think definitely five of them I definitely agree with. In those six names that are there, again, fairly straightforward picks. Those the call that you have to take is between Mukesh, even Rasik Salam is the name I'll add there, because whether you want a guy who you want to groom as an option for the future in terms of he was very good with the back of the hand balls that he bowled in this edition. He can bowl, I wouldn't say across phases, but a very crucial a spot that he occupies. So again, completely your call in terms of how do you want to go with Mukesh. Khalil, as I agree with Jeet's point there, that it's easier to kindly buy back or people who are just new ball bowlers, because a lot of teams already have them. There are very few teams who actually need a new ball bowler. Most teams need a end overs bowlers more so like that. So again, I was probably torn between Mukesh and Rasik Salam for that matter. That whether you want to go very young route, that okay, I'll take somebody like a Rasik Salam and try and groom him as a guy for the future, because everybody then is a very young group. In terms of Abhishek Porel, agree with the temptation as well. But as Ramana Kiran also points out, there are teams who need keepers. But then you already have two keepers. You're retaining Stubbs, you have Rishabh Pant. You're not going to need another one. So I think in terms of that, unfortunate hard it is. Maybe you can buy him back for a higher cost also. So it's a call that you can take, that how many keepers you need. Invariably they'll end up with 3-4. So though to already had my past. So I think in that sense, probably a fair call. My only contention is between Mukesh Kumar and Nasik Salam. But again, that is something in terms of your eye test, that whether he passes your eye test, that he's the guy for me for future.
Delhi fans, let us know if you guys agree with Nick, Anirudh, and Jeet in terms of the retention picks, and it makes you think about how it can all go forward, even from a new coach perspective. If Delhi really acts Ponting and gets someone else who can come in and do the job for them. Many people are saying Mike Hesson could do that, but again, that's me being speculative right now. MEG saying Ramanakiran, yes, DC do not need his wicketkeeper with Pant and Stubbs. Pora will also be a very late entrant to the auction compared to Mukesh and Khalil, something to consider, MEG. And he goes on an ad saying you need to have some balance in terms of bat and ball retention. Otherwise, you'll end up like RCB. Unnecessary MEG, but we'll appreciate all your comments indeed. The big question is, will Prithvi Shaw stay? I personally don't think so. They did take that harsh call to, of course, keep him on the sidelines. And they had to take that call with regards to him and even Warner at some point in time in the tournament as well, given the fact that they started off the tournament 4 defeats out of 5. Right, so that was Delhi Capitals. Guys, quickly like this video before we move on and talk about the final team this evening, which is Chennai Super Kings, a city that I'm residing in right now for the Eliminator, beg your pardon, the Qualifier 2. Can't get the Eliminator in my mind. Qualifier 2 and the final. And we'll move on to Chennai in just a bit. But like this particular video, because all you guys are tuning in, lots of you joining us from Facebook, from X and YouTube. But a like on YouTube will really take this video much more in terms of places. Right. Yeah, you did forget that I'm an RCB fan. I'm still crying over spilt milk here. Right. Let's talk about Tala and Chennai Super Kings, because, man, this is the first time in their history that they didn't make the playoffs with the IPL being held in Chennai. So, again, that whole last game against RCB, how they ended up losing that. Again, ifs and buts. But where do we start? We'll start, as usual, by showcasing their results in what's been a forgettable campaign from a CSK perspective. Let's start with the CSK fan himself, Nikhil Popat here, and tell us about the Reds more than the Greens, because the Reds, they were always, the Greens they were always going to have, but the Reds, was that something, especially back-to-back defeats to LSG, that point in time, derail their campaign, Next?
I think that is just the sign of the season. Very, I wouldn't say frustratingly pleasing season for some of the things that happened, but a lot of things that I don't quite get in terms of what was done. So probably a season of acceptance, so to speak, in terms of what could have been and how we are so used to a certain guy leading and his decisions. But now you are up to a new guy, a new way of functioning. So that is that, and I agree with your point about those two games. But I still think even after, yeah, even had they won it, I don't think they were in a position to be a very good one in terms of being contender for the playoffs, because dude, losing Paterna is a massive hole. I mean, they tried and made up. I don't think they made up. They tried and fixed the hole that Conway left by playing Rachin enough. But I don't think this year was a season where they had enough conviction. Of course, injuries are always part of the game, and they'll never ever help you out. But it just told you how dependent they are on a certain roles being taken. And when that does not happen, they will look a pale shadow of themselves. So they found a way to win. And in terms of tosses, again, something that you not put out as an excuse, but the 7 games that they lost, only twice had they won the toss. So all 5 games, they've probably done the tougher job at the venue. They haven't been able to do that. And of course, you'll end up on the losing side. The 2 games that they won the toss was Gujarat game, where Sai and Shubman suddenly decided, oh, this is how the world is batting, and today we will bat like that. And that very day itself was an insight into post MS life as a captain, that you had Darren Mitchell bowling 4 overs, something that I would have never thought would happen at the start of the season. Again, it's a call that Gaikwad took, and I'm completely happy to give him a season or two as well, because when you are too used to a certain set of style in terms of captaincy and decision making, it is harder to explain or come to terms with, okay, now this team will function differently. So again, a season of acceptance for a lot of Chennai fans, and I think it's a fair reflection in terms of them ending at 5. I was not too perturbed out by that loss. Of course, visuals, noise, and all of that is a different scenario. But in terms of how it ended, I think it was a fair reflection of their decision making, of their backing of a couple of players who never looked a part of this, setup in terms of usage and also form. So a tough season, but still a lot of positives for Chennai to look at, because this is going to be a new start.
When we talk about Chennai and the IPL, we talk about Chennai and Chepauk and being a great combination, and it's almost a given that they're going to win most of the games at home. The 2 hiccups that they had was that one crazy Stoinis masterclass, and then, of course, faltering against Punjab and Sam Curran on that night. So, again, from a CSK perspective, they can look back at certain results and be like, how we would have been in the playoffs. But even if they were in the playoffs, I feel generally they were running out of firepower with their bowling arsenal and their batting arsenal to really compete with the KKRs and the SRHs and the RRs. I could be wrong, but that's just my perspective. We will get Jeet's perspective on CSK, but just time for me to reflect a couple of questions right now. Tushar Singh saying this, a question in Nick's by as a CSK fan. Do you think it's time for CSK to look beyond Dhoni as a player on the team, even though he played well, but him coming on a bat late this season has cost them? Dhoni batted 73 balls specifically in this year's season, right? And it just makes you think whether he could have added much more in terms of coming in a higher entry point. But then everyone was talking about the knee that, of course, was plaguing him. And that is a huge factor as well. The other 2 points about CSK I'd like to mention is, you mentioned it, Nix, Patirana and him being the cheat code that he was, getting injured, Fizz leaving for Bangladesh, and then that story dwindling the way it did. And not to forget, even Rituraj Gaikwad and how he could have probably just been in one particular position. I know he kind of hopped around and batting one down. I think he opened majority of the games. But why do you think that happened? Nick, just to finish up with you, and then I'll get their points. That was also a huge factor, according to me. What do you feel about it?
That is because they were trying to fix the hole that Conway left. They tried to open with Rachin. He got a couple of good knocks. Again, there also I don't think he was as good, but helped by some poor bowling upstart, he made the most of it, got 2 quick starts. And then eventually he got out in a similar way, which made them think that, okay, maybe Rachin is putting too much pressure, which meant that they put Rahane up, and then again Rahane had a niggle. If you have 2 batters who were one of your key reasons to success, and they can only bat in a certain way, then I don't think it's going to help. So they wanted to, because Rachin was not getting starts, you made, okay, we need to put Gaikwad at 3, because it's okay if Rahane gets out very early in search of high runs. But those runs never came because he was woefully out of form. So which is why I said what happened last year with Rahane was, I wouldn't say an outlier, but it is difficult to replicate that. And in all this, you still are missing out on the consistency of the two openers because you can chop and change in everything. But whenever Chennai have done well and they made it to the playoffs, it's on the back of some great opening stands. They've always been a side that's relied massively on both guys going at the same, if not the same rate, but at a very good pace to set the tone for everybody to then come where they want to. I don't think that happened, which is why you saw Mitchell at 3, Mitchell at 8, Rahane 1, Rahane 3, Gaikwad 1, Gaikwad 3. It was a season of lack of conviction, but it is something that I'm still happy to give to Ruturaj that he'll learn. And this is the best way to learn. Success doesn't teach you much, failure will teach you a lot more. So hopefully there'll be a lot more clearer and very maybe authoritative that the backing that they gave Rane, they could have given that to Rachin as well. But again, it's a very subjective call. You take the call and then you live with it.
Okay, before I get into the another CSK fan on this panel, I mean, if you guys know, you know, I'll come to Jeet first with regards to Chennai Super Kings and what they could really put out in terms of final product this season. Jeet, again, people talking about Deepak Chahar also being an absolute cause of concern, given the fact that his bones are made of glass. You feel people are likening him to the Dembele of the footballing world. And we could say what we had to say about CSK and how it really turned out for them this season. But if you had to put one or two main points in terms of why they didn't make the top four and why it just ended up the way it ended up, what are your reasons for Chennai Super Kings this year?
First of all, I would say lack of firepower. That was one of the big issues. When a 42-year-old MS Dhoni finishes with the highest strike rate in the side of 220, and the only batter who struck at 220 with the next best being 160, it shows the kind of gap they had. There was Shivam Dubey who was fairly aggressive. Rachin Ravindra was fairly aggressive. And that's pretty much it. You couldn't look at any other player other than Samir Rizvi who didn't get a consistent run that you'd look at and say that, okay, he's our aggressor on the side or in the playing 11. That is one of the places where they had a huge issue. They just had nobody. They tried Rachin Ravindra initially. He had a couple of good knocks. Then he failed and then he was just taken out. And then came the very, very weird decisions of Das Mitchell in the top three, Ruturaj Gaikwad going down, Ajinkya Rahane opening or batting at number 3. They were all over the place because they didn't have enough options. And rather than sticking to Rachin Ravindra, who was their only option who could have worked as an aggressive opener, they decided to let go of him. So that was one of the big issues that I believe they had, which was lack of firepower and lack of conviction. Number 3 was their pace attack. Now, they've done a good job on Tushar Deshpande of turning him into gold over the last 2 seasons because you wouldn't really expect Tushar Deshpande to be having such really good back-to-back seasons, but he has. And credit to him, he has done really well. But Deepak Chahar, again, injury concerns. He's not really living up. He's having these consistent injury concerns, and he's not even bowling well. When a genuine swing bowler in swinging conditions starts bowling slow ball variations with a new ball, something is not correct. It is completely beyond me why somebody like Deepak Chahar would not back his strengths and start going for weird short balls or off cutters with new ball. Why would you do that? Second was Shardul Thakur, again, a very, very hit and miss, more a miss kind of a T20 bowler. That guy just got bashed game after game. Again, he doesn't have a thought process, right? He just bowls it, he just gets wickets. I don't know how, but you wouldn't really look at a particular delivery and say, oh man,
I will
one
not
ball.
take this Shardul slander. Sorry, but yeah, go on. Theek.
But again, so Shardul also at the end of the day had a very, very disappointing season. So again, without Fizz, without Patirana, the Indian pace attack was found out, barring Tushar Deshpande. Samarjeet Singh again had shades of brilliance, but in the longer run, it was not really impressive. Ravindra Jadeja, again, I've ranted enough about him on the social media, but I'll leave that to Nix.
1 second, guys. You look at last year and they won the fucking tournament with a bang average bowling attack again, right? They didn't have your Fizz, they didn't have Patirana to some certain extent at that tournament as well. And they again relied upon their Indian seamers. Anirudh, let me ask you this. Even if you look at this startling stat that Akash put up in his CSK review written piece, it went on to show a very critical thing about how we always assume Chennai and spinners will thrive. But after SRH, CSK were the team that failed to pick up as many wickets as you would normally think in terms of their spinners, just 14 wickets all season through spin. Do you think that was another contribution in terms of which led to their downfall in many ways.
I think this goes back to the 22 auction where they had Jadeja, obviously, they'd retained Moeen Ali, and they only signed Tikshana, so they didn't try for a frontline Indian spinner. I know they had the likes of Prashant Solanki around, but obviously he was never going to be trusted to play too many games, right? So they never had a established spinner per se. And I actually think, looking back, the Mustafizur Rahman performance against RCB did them more harm than good, because it forced certain selection decisions eventually. Because Fizz played only in place of Patirana, but once Fizz, I think, took 4 wickets against RCB, they felt the need to play Patirana and Fizz, and that meant that Tikshana had to miss out. And Tikshana, despite not being a wicketaker, provided a lot of control. He was a bowler who was used across phases as well last season. And because of that, eventually, once Rachin was not coming off, and Daryl Mitchell was obviously the big buy for them this auction, right? And they were trying to find out which is his best position, because he also had a horrendous start to the season. They had said they felt that let's push Mitchell slightly up, number 3, number 4. So they needed that overseas batter in the middle, Moeen Ali, and that's when they said, okay, let's pull the plug on Rachin, let's get Rahane up top and get Moeen in the middle. So in some ways, that Fizz performance in the first game kind of brought about, let's say, a rolling ball in sense, some of the selection decisions that followed. But again, as a whole, I think the bowling attack Ruturaj Gaikwad needs more help. Let's make that very clear. Ruturaj Gaikwad, the captain, needs a lot more help with the bowling attack, and that starts at the auction table. Come next season, they cannot be going in with a pace bowling attack of Simarjeet Singh, Tushar Deshpande, and Shardul Thakur, with all due respect to all of them, because all of them have at past times and even this season had a couple of good performances, but over a period of season, you need better options, because just like we spoke with Lucknow as well, Patirana may not ever play a 14-game season. So you need to kind of make combination decisions in terms of the auction table from that perspective as well. And as far as the batting concerned, what worked for them last season was they were in some ways a breath of fresh air with their approach. They were extremely aggressive side. They batted. They won the tournament through their batting. Let's make it very clear. Even in the finals, they chased 118, 15 overs, which is a ridiculous chase. Okay, let's not just look at it this season, because this season's gone a little more higher. But back then, in a final, to chase that amount of runs in a final against that bowling attack, which had Shami, Hardik, Noor Ahmed, I think that's a really, really fair reflection of how good they were with the batting. And Devon Conway was a big miss. So I think this season was one where they finally realized. I think it's a good thing for CSK, simply because, even though you may not believe, but even though I'm not the biggest CSK fan going around, I think it's a good thing for them, because it's taught them lessons which I think they needed to learn, especially for the bowling attack. Maybe MS Dhoni can do certain magic, but in general, you need to build a better bowling attack. And as far as the batting is also concerned, you need to kind of find proper batters, guys. You can't just depend on Ruturaj and Dubey, because you look at the season, before every CSK game, I think all of us had the same thought. Get Ruturaj, get Shivam Dubey, and you're not too worried about the CSK batting. Maybe Dhoni will come in, bat 7-8 balls, score a 15-20, but that's just about it. Jadeja was not doing anything with the bat except for the last game. And Moeen Ali in and out with the bat, couple of cameos. Mitchell, a cameo here and there. Rachin in and out. Rahane was very poor throughout the season. Rizvi, I don't want to be too harsh,
but then again,
Rizvi did not get enough opportunities.
It highlights their power, and what Jeet mentioned, the lack of firepower. Surely they were thinking about that at the auction table, and we saw a couple of, I don't know, memes and reels come out where Sundar Raman pipped, Preeti Zinta to get Daryl Mitchell.
Yeah, so
we thought Daryl Mitchell would be great.
The two. Yeah. So the thing is, for them, they wanted to improve their batting. So that's why they thought, instead of Moeen, Mitchell is a better batter. And I still think Mitchell is a better batter than Moeen. So they upgraded there. Conway was a big loss. So Conway was Rachin was not going to start the season, was he? So once Conway was injured, it was Rachin who took up his place. And Samir Rizvi was the Ambati Raidu replacement, who did a really, really important job for them at number 4, number 5, number 6 last year. So they found these 3 replacements from last year, but because 1 or 2 pieces didn't fit, they had to move other pieces around to fit the others in. So it was almost like a puzzle, which you almost felt like you're always one piece short when you play a puzzle, right? You always feel like there was 1 piece short with the batting. With the bowling, come on, man. The bowling was genuinely, come the last 4-5 games. I actually don't know how they defended 160 against Punjab. Punjab should be kicking themselves for not scoring 160 that day against that bowling attack. Okay? They did a really good job, Simarjeet Singh and Tushar Deshpande, especially the new ball, to actually defend 160 that day in the Dharamshala game. So, in general, the bowling needs a lot of work. We'll talk about the tensions, of course, going forward. Batting, again, positives. One positive is, even going forward, they know the template of T20 batting. They have right hand, left hand combination. I'm convinced even next season, irrespective of who they retain, who they don't retain, they will continue to build that template, and they just need to find better options for each of these different positions. So I think they will. I mean, CSK should be fine going forward. It's just that maybe the fans should not expect title every season going forward. It may not be 5 and 10 going forward, but they will still be one of the really solid sides, always competing come the playoff time.
And by fans, you mean people like yourself?
I mean, sure. I mean, Nikhil would testify with what in terms of what I feel, so I'm not going to tell anything about that.
Okay, no, just pulling your foot over there. We'll come to Tushar Pandey and how well he's been with the ball in terms of their pick of their bowlers. But we have to, of course, talk about the captain, Ruturaj Gaikwad, in terms of what he mustered for them this season. By far their best batter, 583 runs. At one point in time, he was giving Virat Kohli a run for his money for the orange cap. But 100 that he got, and it really makes you think about Gaikwad as well. Not just in the CSK scheme of things, but the Indian scheme of things. Next, we spoke about it earlier with regards to his position being shuffled around here and there. Also, those stats that we just showed, 583 runs as a captain, that's the most in the tournament compared to all the other captains. So, of course, another thing ticked off from an individual standpoint from Gaikwad. But do you think at one point in time when he was batting for those first 8, 10, 12 overs, he had the likes of, say, a Raidu last season to kind of just add that impetus? I know they had the deputy commissioner of sixes, as he's gone on to say, Shivam Dubey in that Chennai thing, and the firepower in terms of Samir Rizvi, who probably could have been used better. But Gaikwad is a batter, and CSK's batting performance this season, where do you kind of give them marks on both? First Gaikwad and then the team.
Probably harsh, but I'll not give him more than 7.5. Again, he's got the runs, but all of those runs have not come at the right pace for him and the team. So you look at a couple of chases that they had, even the chase against RR. Now, if you wrap up that chase earlier, you don't have to worry about losing by 18 runs in the last game. You could lose by 25, 30 runs, and you could still make it. All these play a part. So as a batter, I think he was too conscious about the side. He was too conscious about the lack of support at the other end. That okay, I don't have too many people at the other end, so you can understand why he was batting at that rate. But you still feel that maybe this is a good time for him to introspect and learn that I don't want him to go down the KL Rahul way. This is probably the start of the curve that if you take too much responsibility, you put too much price on a wicket, you could end up going down that route that you'll only bat at one way. And that's not how Chennai want him to bat. So I think this season was fine for him in terms of trying to learn that, because it is a difficult spot. We can say how much ever we want to, but it's the expectations that will have to be toned down. Very few captains come into this role as a batter captain and nail that. It isn't that easy. We've seen years where people have captained and not won anything. So in terms of batter, I think he was fine. But as you said, he missed the support that he got from Conway or from not Raina, but other options that he had in terms of other options who got a higher rate so that he can go. In a couple of games, he did start off very, very well. So that's where I think credit to him that he let go of the baggage and played just his role as a batter. But the captaincy definitely played a part, as much as we may or may not agree on that call. As a batting order, something that Anirudh touched upon, what you have to realize is it's very difficult to come into a lineup and bat at a certain rate. Now you see that with Darren Mitchell. How much ever cricket we've seen of Darren Mitchell in the last 2 years, you've never seen him look like that, how he did in that final or in that final league game, where he's just trying to hit like this in terms of Darren Mitchell के साथ he associate class, elegance, picking the gaps. Okay, it may just be in a limited section on the ground, but it is still very assured, very authoritative. That to me never came through with Mitchell, because he was too, like it was with Rachin, they were just too intense or focused on let's just get going at a very good rate. I saw that with Rahane as well. They wanted to show the intent. So I do not blame them for the intent, but it was the choice of shots, the execution. That's where they were found a bit more lacking. And again, if you have your best batter getting out to the worst possible matchup in terms of two ducks for Shivam Dubey at the worst possible time, getting out to spin, it's not good. It's not going to help any side. So for me, without Conway, they were going to be challenged. I was very positive and hopeful for both Rachin and Mitchell, but I think they both were too eager in terms of just wanting to establish themselves. I think Samir, I had a lot of hopes for, but it's probably a bit too, I would say, raw, and I wouldn't say untested, just too raw for this league. He can get a few more time, build with him, select his shots, and then you can be at a better rate. Maybe Jinx is possibly done in terms of the options that and the things that he brings to the table. He did his job last season, and that is fine. But going forward, I think we'll have to find more options because it will not. See, Raidu also did a thankless job. It's very easy to say, "Arey, Raidu batting at 5-6, bro," but you see what others were trying to do
Tough
at 10.
job to do.
So it's
Yeah.
not easy to replace that role. So in terms of batting, as Anirudh said, they lost more because of the batting. But it's fine. As long as they're able to accept those flaws and they work on them, I'm sure they'll come up with better because Fleming now when you have MS, you can give him whatever you want to. Take Tushar, take Shardul, take Simarjit. He'll work around with it. You cannot do that with Ruturaj Gaikwad. He's a different player. He's a different captain. When you saw that in his captaincy, this was the first season where you had to accept that you will not go to spill under pressure. They will go to pace. They will go to pace. They will not use Sander. They will not use Monali. This is, as I said, a season of acceptance that the baton has been passed, and you'll have to wait to see how Gaikwad develops his own captaincy style as well.
Ramana Kiran saying if Dubé is considered as the same league as Hetmaier, Klaassen, i.e. the enforcer, then I'm a Dutchman. And then in hindsight, Gaikwad's run a ball knock versus Ara might have hurt the net run rate in qualification. Again, you can obviously look at certain things, but he needed to get the points more importantly than the net run rate. And a lot of hype around Hungergaker, nowhere to be seen right now. I saw at the airport and got a selfie with Hungergaker as well.
Nice.
And MEG going on to say they spent 7+ crores on Rizvi and they didn't play him. They obviously needed a rider replacement. They didn't get it. The batting basically became a two-guy job. And he goes on ad lads saying, and then they got Gleason as a Conway replacement when Mitchell, Moore and Rachin were not performing. Something to definitely think about indeed. Let's talk about a little bit about the bowlers. Even though we've spoken about it, we have to just showcase this graphic. Because Tushar Deshpande last year, 21 wickets. He was a standout for them. This year, 17 wickets. So he is, of course, something to consider. Fifth best in terms of economy in the power play. And he got 6 wickets to show for it as well. What were the silver linings from a bowling perspective? We've spoken about Patirana. We've spoken about how Mustafizur was a great addition and last-minute pick for them. Any other sort of positives or really bad negatives to make a note of here, Jeet?
Well, bad negatives for sure. The spin attack was not convincing. But again, coming to Tushar Deshpande and what he did on the field rather than off the field. So again, a phenomenal season. And
Off the field, it was just the WhatsApp statuses, right?
Yes, exactly. So not diving into that, but on the field, he had a sensational run. Again, economy of 8.8. I'll take that in a season where again, like the bowlers have got bashed and have had an economy of 9.5 or over 10. 8.8 was a very good season. Again, back-to-back seasons where he was the wicket-taking bowler and ended up being a CSK's best bowler. So phenomenal job on Tushar Deshpande. I don't know what magic have CSK done, but they have turned him into a very, very good bowler in the IPL over the past 2 seasons. And credit to them and credit to Tushar Deshpande as well for that. But dwelling on to negatives, again, the spin attack just didn't convince me. Again, I would say it's very, very unfortunate for 2 bowlers in particular in the IPL. One is Mit Santner, the other guy is Sai Kishore. 2 very, very good T20 finger spin bowlers who have been on the sidelines because of the kind of original playing 11 they've got or the number of spinners they've been preferred over. So again, Mit Santner, what a smart bowler, but he had to sit out because they had Rachin Ravindra on the side who was utilized a bit, but again, primarily due to Ravindra Jadeja. Mahesh Dikshana, again, this guy was really good when he burst onto the scene. But this season, again, he did the same thing that Ravindra Jadeja was doing in terms of firing in the balls at 95, 100 kph, which was not the ideal way to go about it. As a spinner, someone like Ravindra Jadeja, who has a lot of experience of playing cricket, of playing international cricket or franchise cricket as well, you need to have that level of understanding of how to adjust to different pitches and different situations. You cannot have a one-pronged approach where you just keep firing the balls at a certain pace and not bring the pitch into the play or try to deceive the batters. Something that Mit Santner has been very good at, and we already saw in the limited games that he played as well. He was smart enough at varying his pace, and that is what was managing to outfox the batters. Sadly, when we didn't see that with either Jadeja or Tikshana at the end of the day. Yes, Tikshana kept it tight, but what was really expected of him as a new ball spinner was wickets, and we didn't get that. Jadeja, same thing in the middle overs. Again, really bad. So the spin attack, surprisingly, for CSK failed. And CSK historically have been a team that doesn't really rely on their wrist spinners. So they would probably be carrying a spinner or two in their squad. This time they had Prashant Solanki, but he didn't get a game. So they bank upon the finger spinners and they didn't live up this time around. So that was a huge issue. Other than that, again, I believe, look, age curve is a bit of a bitch at the end of the day. With most of the players, it doesn't really turn out well. Now, whether it's Daz Mitchell this time around or Moin Ali or the replacement and Richard Gleeson. Richard Gleeson, again, has had injury concerns over quite a long period of time. And this guy has lost his pace over a period of time as well. So getting in somebody who's not a regular T20 bowler as well was, again, quite surprising. So again, it didn't pan out well. So in terms of how they roster the pace attack is going to be vital in the future. Stop looking at those who have got experience. It's time to probably also look at those who have done well in the domestics and could be even young or could have the potential. Someone like Rajvardhan Hangargekar, CSK have been very clear that they are looking at him as a future prospect. And that's the reason why they are having him in the squad. Yes, too, maybe he could have been given a game or two over maybe Jeet or maybe over Shardul, but in the future, try to involve him more because there is a lot of value in him as a pacer and even as a lower order hitter. So they just need to get better in terms of rostering their pace attack and also start looking at those kind of finger spinners who have got the ability to adjust to conditions. Tikshana, I just hope it's probably done. It's time to look at some other spinner or maybe start involving wrist spinners as well. Because at the end of the day, if you have a squad or if you are entering with a playing 11 in today's day and age, which doesn't have a wrist spinner, who are your match winners, then I think there is something wrong or there is something that needs to be contemplated. And I hope they do that in the future.
There is only one leg spinner who's playing in the last in the top three teams though. So it just tells you how much you can still back what you want to, but it's about just thinking out loud. Because as Jeet pointed out, the numbers they're actually one of the better sides in terms of economy rate, in terms of spin. But that is because the role that Gaikwad gave them. And that's where I feel someone like Fleming and Ruturaj will have to sit down and, as Jeet said, you either decide whether you want to use spin, and if you don't want to use spin, you'll have to change the squad accordingly. Because if you're playing Moin, if you're playing Rachin, and if you're going to play Santner, you will have to trust them. In the GT game, Santner bowled 1 over before he was called back after like 10,000 runs were scored. So that is also something that has played a massive part because you associate spin to win, as you know, Ramanathan comes out that has spin to win been become irrelevant for CSK Chepak. That is because of two reasons. One, Chepak hasn't always been that. Something Fleming touched upon in the games this year, that they have not had the idea that how will this deck behave. So if you as a home team have no clue how the deck is going to play out, you're always going to be second doubting yourself in terms of, as a captain and a coach, that who do I go to? And which is why the point about Theekshana and Jadeja bowling like medium pacers, I hope they'll remove Shahid Afridi as their idol and they can start looking at more spinners. Because see, if you are, so there's a way to look at it. If you are a guy who's not there to take wickets, you can afford to have a spell of 1 for 21. That's what Sunil Narayan does for his side. He's very economical. He'll not take wickets, but he'll put the pressure on you. If Jadeja had two more people who were happy to take wickets, I'm fine with him bowling at 150. I don't care. But if you do not have that option of wicket takers, and if it's your responsibility to take wickets, then you cannot be stuck on the same thing that no, I will bowl this only. If the wickets come, they come. If they don't, they don't. So I think that is where the adjustment will have to be made, either from the players, that either they adapt, or the setup is such that they involve far more wicket takers, whether it is through wrist spinners or pacers, the call that Ruturaj and Fleming have to take.
Okay, before we move on to the retentions and finish up with CSK and this review part 2 out of 3, Sportsfan has one for Jeet and Nick, saying CSK has built a reputation of being worst franchise for youngsters. Do you agree with that? I'm guessing he's talking about all that hunger caker being brought in and not even being drip fed a game. Jeet?
Yeah, I think it's fairly true. I mean, look, that's the pattern they've had. They tend to, back those players who've got enough experience. And experience comes with age as well at the end of the day, right? So all these signings, whether it is Daz Mitchell, at the end of the day, Daz Mitchell, Richard Gleeson, Moeen Ali, sticking to Moeen Ali, not preferring Hangar Gekar, not having Rizvi, consistent stretch, or Rachin Ravindra getting a consistent stretch, is all a sign of, at the end of the day, backing experience. You want to play it safe, and that is what CSK like to do at the end of the day. They never got rid of Das Mitchell. He was also struggling, right? He didn't have a good start. Ajinkya Rane, they didn't get rid of Ajinkya Rane. They kept backing him, even including the finale against RCB where they had to win. They backed Ajinkya Rane. So at the end of the day, yes, they do have that reputation, and there is a reason they have it. It has worked for them previously, but it's just that the times have changed. The T20 game is evolving. You need to have that fine balance of youngsters, which is basically youth and experience. Right now, there is a significant imbalance which they need to fix going down the line.
But Knicks, I mean, generally, an ardent CSK fan would be like, look, we were even termed the dad's army and all of that, and we still got the results. And historically as well, they've always signed players who've been there, done it, right from your Scott Styris to your Tisara Pereira to your Jacob Oram to whoever. The names go on and on and on. So again, would they want to fully change their funder heading into 2025, 2026, now that they have Rituraj as captain and that Dhoni era, dare I say, is over?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it is something that a franchise has taken a call that this is how we want to play the game. These are the players we will back. Now, it's up to you whether you want to be happy with it or you don't want to be happy with it. So there have been times where, okay, where you have, so it's like a franchise taking a call that I'll back youngsters, and if they come good, I'm happy with it. Now, when the same Watson is backed and it comes good, we are like, dude, see how they CSK back Watson and he came good and delivered for them, bro. See how they used Moeen Ali and he delivered for them. So it's a fine line between trying to balance the two. Eventually, it comes down to the coach and the captain that this is the line of thought that we are going to go with, that we are going to back experience. We don't, now we've heard timeless times about no meetings and all of that. This will not continue. That was a method that worked for MS, so he was happy to stick to it. And if you have mega auctions every 3 seasons, it's up to you as a franchise to take a call that how many youngsters can you develop in just those 3 seasons. Because if you end up losing them to the others, what's the point of building this side with a lot of youngsters? So there is merit in terms of course, you'd want youth and experience both, but it's very easily said than done in terms of who all are you backing now. In you take at KKR, who is the younger lad that they have at this point of time in the entire lineup? It's the two pacers. Now those two pacers have done great for them. Everybody else is an experienced pro. So you see SRH, Abhishek Sharma has always been around, so he's not a youngster. But Nitish Reddy, they backed him because Nitish Reddy was given the ball enough. Now they haven't used Shahbaz Ahmed. Does it make it a worse franchise for Shahbaz to beat? Who knows? Eventually, it's about the conviction of the coach and the captain that, okay, with MS gone, they'll not be able to survive if they keep having people who MS has to guide. That, okay, give this something to MS, he'll figure. No, you don't have to do it. Now is the time where Fleming and Ruturaj both will have to come into play, that we'll now decide who we want. And this is the time where you'll have to balance out that I want bigger names as well. I want some of the best players of this format in my side, because I can't always rely on a Shardul Thakur, because there is no MS to give him that confidence and all of that. So again, I agree to Tushar's point that Raghuvanshi played, but he played because Nitish Rana was injured. Had he been fit, Raghuvanshi wouldn't have played. And Samir Rizvi also played. So I'm not saying it's the right way, there is no right or wrong in terms of how you want to build a franchise. It's eventually, if you have a thought, you stick to it, and then you take a call after every auction cycle, which is why the next auction cycle will be very exciting, because I don't think even 4 or 5 of these guys will remain. Most of them will go because they'll have to have an overall. So whether that overall happens with experience or with youth, it's for us to see.
Okay, it's a perfect way to end this particular review then with CSK's retentions. But before that, let me just share my screen and show you this particular news which broke earlier today. CSK CEO Kasi Viswanathan hopeful of MS Dhoni's IPL 2025 ability. It's available on the cricket.com website. Go check out some of the pertinent quotes that Kasi Bro has, of course, shared to the rest of the world about MS Dhoni and all of that. One man who'll know extra and inside information is Anirudh Srinivas, who's always well connected with big CSK people. I won't mention any more names, but Anirudh, jokes apart, where do you sit on CSK's retentions? Where do you stand on them having MS Dhoni for another year? Because even some of the pundits and the experts and the former players are saying MS will be there. They'll probably play him 2 or 3 games just to kind of, make sure that whole sort of transition phase is smooth. Do you agree with them? And do you agree with these 6 blokes as a retention
So
option for CSK?
I want to refer one of these quotes I kind of abide by a lot. Live and let live. Let the man live, boss. He's done enough. I mean, he's 43. He's probably going to be 44, and like enough. It's done. Like he's had a great run. I'm sure many CSK fans would have loved having a fairy tale ending, but boss, you had your fairy tale ending last year. He pushed along for another year. Fair enough. He wanted to play another year for himself, for the fans, whatever it was. It was a good run. He batted, in fact, really well this season. It's enough. It's the done. Let's
But
move
but
on. I
one
think.
second, let me play devil's advocate. He's delivered with the bat, and
Yeah.
arguably he's probably the best wicketkeeper right now as well.
But the point is, he's 43, boss, and his knee is going to collapse anytime. I'm not sure he himself would want to play another year, right? So, I mean, it just makes sense for all parties. So, I mean, you can retain him because I'm going to talk about the fourth retention here, where is the point of contention, because I think the other three are pretty straightforward. So, just looking at this, I think Ruturaj, Jadeja, I have my concerns, but sure, you have to retain him, I guess. Shivam Dubey as well. Patirana straightforward again. Rachin or Conway, I mean, it's a choice. So if it's I think this is where the captain comes into play. Does he feel that Conway being the wicket keeper kind of solves an issue? Because then you wouldn't have to go searching for a wicketkeeper in the auction. So Rachin Conway is a very toss of a coin thing. I would understand either way. I have no problem with either because Rachin's young, he's got massive potential. Either way, I wouldn't have a problem Rachin or Conway because I think Conway is the better player right now and he's a wicketkeeper. But at the same time, if you've got someone like Rachin Ravindra, you could easily see him blossom into a wonderful, wonderful top order player, especially in white ball cricket. The fourth one, Tushar Deshpande, I agree with. I don't think he's going to be a capped India player. Ideally, again, I'm not still the most convinced by him, but he's shown so much of an improvement this season. I know he picked 27 wickets, in fact, last year it was in a title winning season, but this season he's bowled some of the most difficult overs in the absence of many senior bowlers. Someone like Shardul Thakur, his senior, his Mumbai senior himself, who had a horrible season with the ball. Despite that, Tushar Deshpande stood up, and he deserves to be. I think he's had a. I did not expect. I'm going to hold my hands up and say that I did not see Tushar Deshpande pulling out, having this season the way he did. So I understand having retaining him. I'm ideally from a CSK perspective, because of Ruturaj Gaikwad, the captain, I would still try to find 3 or 4 other Indian fast bowlers who could potentially pip Tushar Deshpande to a starting spot. But I'm okay having him as an uncapped retention. I wouldn't have a problem. So I agree with Nick's retention. Conway Rachin, I have no problem. I would go either way. It's a completely captain's choice. It's what Ruturaj wants. Whether Ruturaj feels more comfortable having a wicketkeeper makes it easier for you in the auction, or do you say that Rachin Ravindra is a superstar in the making? You've got to keep him. So either way, I'm comfortable. It's the captain's choice. So yeah, agree with it overall.
Nix, I'll give you final say because you're a CSK fan proper, unlike the other man who just spoke right now. But Jeet, where do you stand with regards to the 6 names over here? And does MS Dhoni feature in your retention list, as blasphemous as that sounds?
Okay, so coming to your second question first, I wouldn't want MSD to continue. Of course, at the end of the day, it's up to him. But last year, potentially was ideal, having won the trophy. It was probably the best time. But look, again, CSK have a history of getting back those old players into their coaching staff. They've got Michael Lasty, they've got Wayne Rouse. I'd love to see MSD being involved in the coaching staff and helping the youngsters, helping Ruturaj Gaikwad from the sidelines if he can, like Ashish Nehra does. But coming to the retentions, I again agree with all the 6 names here. It was again a toss-up between Rachin Ravindra and Devin Conway. Devin Conway, again, there is a long way to go. So I believe he will be fit enough. So again, he solves 2 issues. He'll give you that wicket-keeping option in the absence of MSD. And again, he's an opener and a much more reliable opener. It will also bring that Ruturaj and Devin Conway pair back, which has been quite successful in the past. Personally, I would have loved to have retain Mitch Santner, but at the end of the day, what's the point if you're not going to play him? He's better off actually being in the starting 11 of some other franchise, hopefully. So since he won't be playing or he won't be featuring in the 11, I believe these 6 names are perhaps quite perfect. Yeah.
Okay, super. Nix, finally with you, because we just showed that Kasi particular news, and it's available, and he's had his say. Now, from a CSK fan perspective, and I was asking a lot of them in that RCB CSK fan camp saying, is this Dhoni's last season? And the noise around the stadiums, or the noise from every home, at least in Chennai and Tamil Nadu, is the fact that they still want to see MS Dhoni. I know it's fan sentiment, I know it's emotion, but do you think there is even a 1% chance that MS Dhoni comes back and plays another season? Because obviously this is not the way he wanted to sign off, with RCB knocking out CSK, CSK not making the playoffs, and everyone still in a sort of limbo with MS Dhoni, whether they want to see him again or not. Where do you stand in it? Because obviously you're one of the biggest Dhoni fans, but you, of course, think about the team first. So where do you stand on MS Dhoni being retained for the next year or not?
I think MS will also think about the team first. I think he did fair job of wanting to play this season. I think he exceeded expectations that any one of us would have had of him in terms of coming in for 73 balls and doing the impact that he had batting at that rate. I think he's done his job. He's done his job in terms of passing the baton as well. And I think that is something that I felt was very important for him, because you saw that when he was even with India in his towards the end, that he was very keen on ensuring that Kohli has everything that he wants before MS leaves. He tried that with Jadeja, it did not work out. So he waited for another couple of seasons where Fleming, if we know, has been working with Gaikwad on the sidelines for enough time now to give him that captaincy, 101 or whatever it is. So I think that is done. And this season, we did not see him interfere also as well. Now, see, he's a keeper. He'll adjust the angles. That is one thing, as opposed to him dictating what is to be done. So I think all of that is done in terms of his inputs. As a batter, I think if he's not, for me, MS was always about one of the greatest runners between the wickets. If he can't run and he can only bat for a limited amount of time, I think he'll be honest enough to feel that I know there is an emotion of him getting the fairy tale ending, but he's never got it. And I don't think it is just destiny. If it was meant to be, it would have happened. The YSDL 6 wouldn't have gone for 110 meters and the ball wouldn't have been changed. So there are some stories, as much as we want to write, you can't control the end of it. I'm hoping MS will also control the controllables. Give Ruturaj a free rein that you take the call. I'm off this. And I don't see him being Ashish Nehra. I don't see him being at the sidelines, because I think he's going to be happy farming in his own world. So in my opinion, he's done. Thank you so much for all the memories. As much as that feel will be there that you want him to play, there are many other leagues that if he wants to play, he can freely play, ask the amount that he wants, and he'll get it. But for IPL, I feel we've seen the last of him, and it will be fair on the team as well to move on. And which is why those rotations that you see that I picked, all six, they are, as everybody's asking, it's youth and emphasized. That Conway is 32. Yes, there is another season, but then you'll have to start the change immediately. Invest in Rachin, invest in Tushar. You've already done that. It's coming good. Back them, build a good core, and stand unfortunate as it is. But yeah, MS done. Hopefully the team will learn.
Yeah, look, I mean, the consensus is the fact that it could be an end of an era for CSK, that MS Dhoni era. What an era it has been. And dare I say, the last we've ever seen of him in the IPL. But he'll be back in some sort of capacity, whether it's on his Strawberry Fields or as an mentor for the Chennai Super Kings. The key word being Chennai Super Kids for them in the future. Can they, of course, get hold of some great talents, great potential? Only time will tell. Nix is chuckling in the corner indeed. But it's been a riveting show, guys. Reviewing three teams, LSG, DC, and CSK finally. We're going to be back tomorrow doing the watch along. Of course, Akshay will be back with that in the comfort of the Bangalore studios, checking out all things SRH RR in Chennai. We'll be bringing you the fan cams as well, as I'm in Chennai right now. But Jeet, Anirudh, and Nikhil, you guys have been fantastic with your insight. And of course, certain talking points which will definitely make the fans comment more. That's all we have. Time for on cricket.com. Vikas Shukla, our producer, happy birthday to you. Going on to say, Avanish, what are the plans for dinner? I don't know, mate. You've turned 30. Tell us what you've, of course, planned for your day. But I think I'm just going to get a quick room service and tuck in because I haven't slept a wink. So that is my plan in Chennai tonight. And then, of course, the weekend takes over by itself. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll see you guys shortly. We're going to be doing the part 3 of the Mega Review on Saturday, which, of course, happens at the same time as City versus United. I think I'll have my iPad out here and we'll finish that as soon as possible. And we'll say goodbye to you all. Thanks so much as well. And Jeet, some love coming your way from KL Keda. And of course, did Avnish call us kids? No, it was just a joke, man. It was just a joke indeed. And any healing tips for yesterday's match? Yes, plenty of booze. Go drown your sorrows and subscribe to cricket.com if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Goodbye from us. We'll see you shortly. Cheers.